Chapter 1121. Nope. Luo Qingtong waved her hand at it, then leaped and flashed away. Oh my god. Let's fight. Seeing Luo Qingtong leave, Little Pig gritted its teeth and carried the small package on its back. Although it was called a small package, it was actually bigger than its body. However, when it turned around and saw the appearance of the little gold mouse, its heart instantly calmed down. Squeak squeak. The little gold mouse was pressed under the package, and its round little butt twisted and struggled with all its might. It was about to use all its strength, but it was still unable to escape from the package. It could only pitifully open its cute and large eyes, and its eyes were filled with tears as it watched Luo Qingtong's figure disappear into the distance. Its great treasure, wow. All right. Obediently listen to your Grandpa Pig, and I'll take you to find her later. Little Pig said as he patted Little Pig with his little hoof. Then, he lifted Little Pig up. Let's go. The little gold mouse was lifted up by Little Pig, and after swaying left and right for a while carrying the small package, it finally steadied its body. Its 4 short little legs struggled, and when it heard that Little Pig would take it to find the great treasure, its round mouse face was instantly filled with fighting spirit. Its pair of round eyes even sparkled brightly. Squeak squeak. It wanted to find the great treasure. The little gold mouse stomped its 4 limbs and followed Little Pig's footsteps. 1 pig and 1 mouse ran out with its short little legs. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. When Little Pig and the little gold mouse ran out, Luo Qingtong had already led Elder Xia away. Bang bang bang. The latter's attacks came one after another. Luo Qingtong tried her best to conserve the strength within her body, and exerted her eye technique to the limit, ceaselessly moving about in the dense forest of the mountain range. Boom boom boom. In the mountain range, the figures of the 2 people, one chasing and one fleeing, ceaselessly flashing towards the depths of the forest. Elder Xia's extraordinary sage aura was sufficient to scare away any demon beasts patrolling in the surroundings. Along with the passage of time, the distance between Luo Qingtong and him was pulled closer bit by bit. Ha! B*TCH, let's see how long you can run later. Sensing that Luo Qingtong was getting closer and closer to him, Elder Xia sneered in his heart. It would not be long before he could catch her. He laughed heartily, looking at Luo Qingtong with eyes full of lust. When I catch you later, I'll have a good taste of you, and then I'll let you die a painful death. He licked his lips as he spoke. His wrinkled face was filled with a disgusting smile. It was a pity that he couldn't train such a rare talent by his side. However, such a difficult woman was indeed too dangerous. This was Elder Xia's first time encountering a martial emperor who could escape from him for so long. But it didn't matter. Soon, all of this would be over. Elder Xia's lewd laughter was extremely horrifying. Luo Qingtong was not affected at all. She glanced at Elder Xia and continued to move forward quickly. In her mind, spiritual connections were established one after another. 1, 2, 3. Through her eye technique, a huge topographic map of the mountain range appeared in her retina. Following the establishment of the spiritual connections in her mind, one red dot after another appeared on the topographic map of the mountain range in her eyes. A vague outline of a figure suddenly appeared on the topographic map. At the same time. Chapter 1122. Elder Xia's voice, which was as sharp as an owl, rang out. Bang! 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 Luo Qingtong's figure was forced to a corner of the stone wall by the qi wall that he had created. At the same time, Elder Xia's figure instantly moved from not far away. In an instant, his hands were like sharp claws, fiercely grabbing at her. Under such circumstances, Luo Qingtong was surrounded by qi walls on her left and right, a stone wall behind her, and Elder Xia, whose gaze was cold and ruthless, with a perverted expression, was in front of her. She was practically forced into a desperate situation. At this moment, she didn't have much strength left in her body. It wasn't enough to break through the chi walls on her left and right, so she could escape from the side. Ha! Slut, let's see how you escape this time. Elder Xiao looked at Luo Qingtong with a perverted gaze. His hand suddenly grabbed at Luo Qingtong's chest. Looking at his movements, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly flashed with a ruthless aura. Boz! Just as Elder Xiao was about to grab her, at the last red dot in the mountain range, the little pig was using its little hooves to dig a hole. As it dug, it muttered, "Why in the world do you want to bury these things?" As it spoke, it used its hind hooves to kick the little golden mouse next to it. "Hey, bring the things here." Squeak! The little golden mouse, who was half squatting at the side, hastily opened a small bag beside it and took out a spiritual tool brimming with rich aura. Then, it held it in its mouth, flapped its limbs, and ran to the little pig's side. It buried the spiritual tool in the hole that the little pig had dug. Or rather, it was inserted in the hole. Boz! As the spiritual tool entered the hole, the last connection point in Luo Qingtong's mind was confirmed. In the next second, the huge topographic map of the mountain range was reflected in her eyes. The red dots on the map impressively connected to form the outline of a huge soaring dragon. Pulse-raising. As the last red dot appeared on the topographic map of the mountain range, Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up instantly. Facing Elder Xie's attack, she suddenly half-squatted on the ground. Boom! She pressed her palm onto the ground. In an instant, the entire mountain range began to tremble violently, with the river as the vein and the mountain as the dragon head. For extremes 8 desolations, heaven and earth soaring dragon formation, rise. Luo Qingtong pressed her palm down. In an instant, with the place where she stood as the center, the ground cracked and the stone walls cracked. Behind Luo Qingtong's feet, a huge and sturdy body suddenly appeared. An incomparably huge transparent dragon suddenly rose from the cracked earth. The dragon head was right where Luo Qingtong was. The girl stepped on the dragon's head and held the dragon's horn in her hand. Following the high-spirited roar, it stood tall on the dragon's head and looked disdainfully in all directions. The heaven and earth dragon veins rise. 8 desolations soaring dragon. Luo Qingtong used a formation to gather the mountain aura in the 10 directions mountain range into a dragon and summoned it all at once. Rumble. As the soaring dragon rose, Elder Xie's attack fiercely collided with the power of the soaring dragon in an instant. That soaring dragon was formed from the mountain range in all directions. Elder Xie's claw bombarded its body. The force of the explosion was all absorbed by the surrounding mountain range. Rumble. Chapter 11:23. Plop. Little Pig and the little gold mouse had just finished filling up the hole they had dug. In an instant, they felt the earth tremble. Plop. The pig and the mouse were shaken and fell to the ground. Hey hey, don't sit on my head. Little Pig stretched out his little hoof and pulled away the little gold mouse that was lying on his head. Holy shit! This woman. He was dumbstruck as he looked at the huge dragon head in the distance. This woman was simply too awesome. She actually thought of using the energy of the mountain range to form a dragon. That's right. Since ancient times, there had been this idea of a mountain range resembling a dragon. Not to mention, this mountain range was close to the holy capital of the Empire of Qin. It had also received a lot of dragon energy and luck from the holy dynasty of the Empire of Qin. The phenomenon of the mountain range resembling a dragon was stronger than other places, and the energy of the mountain range was also denser. My master is too awesome. Little Pig flapped his 4 little hooves and ran toward Luo Qingtong. Halfway through, he suddenly felt that he had forgotten something. When he turned around and saw the little gold mouse was still spinning around dizzily, he immediately rolled his eyes and ran back. So troublesome. As he spoke, he lifted one of his little hooves and threw the little gold mouse onto his body. Then, he spread his 4 hooves and ran toward Luo Qingtong. At the same time, Bei Qing and the others, who had followed Elder Xie's attack into the mountain range, also felt the intense tremors in the depths of the mountain range. Let's go. Let's quickly go and take a look. Feeling the powerful aura spreading in the air, the faces of the few people instantly hardened, and they hurriedly rushed over. Rumble. In the depths of the mountain range, Luo Qingtong controlled the mountain range to transform into a dragon. After blocking Elder Xie's attack, she suddenly slapped the dragon's horn. Roar! The huge transparent dragon head instantly rose up. After a long and resounding roar, the huge dragon formed by the energy of the mountain range completely rose from the ground. Then, with a sweep of its tail, the entire body of the dragon swept towards Elder Xie, who was still in shock. Bang bang bang! When Luo Qingtong controlled the dragon to make such a move, in the surroundings of the mountain range, the spirit tools that the little pigs and little gold mice had dug and buried in the pits had shockingly exploded one after another and shattered into powder. The spiritual qi inside was exhausted, and all of it sank into the ground, turning into a rich array formation energy that helped Luo Qingtong control this mountain range dragon. Rumble. The dragon's long tail slammed into Elder Xie's body. Before he could recover from the shock of Luo Qingtong's sudden awakening of the mountain, he was sent flying by the dragon's tail. Then, in the next second, that thick dragon body instantly coiled up. Then, the head of the dragon raised up high and bit down violently. Rumble. In an instant, Elder Xie's figure was completely submerged in the attack of the huge dragon formed by the mountain range. As for Luo Qingtong, she had already jumped down from the top of the dragon's head when she commanded the dragon to attack. Bang! She stood on top of a huge tree nearby and slightly raised her eyebrows as she looked at the billowing dust and violent energy in front of her. Master! At this moment, Little Pig ran over while carrying the little gold mouse on his back. Oh my god, that was so cool. This time, Elder Xie is definitely going to die. Let's go back and celebrate. Be careful. Chapter 11:24. Bang! When Little Pig's voice rang out, Luo Qingtong's sharp intuition also detected the terrifying killing intent behind her. Boom! She quickly dodged to the side. In the blink of an eye, the huge tree she was standing on was blasted into pieces. Luo Qingtong's long hair fluttered in the air as she suddenly knelt down on the ground in a half-kneeling position. She raised her head and saw Elder Xie's figure appear in the area where the dragon was violently attacking. Elder Xie was in an extremely sorry state. His robe was almost torn to shreds and hung on his body in tatters. His entire body was covered in dust and his hair was completely charred. He looked no different from a beggar. However, although Elder Xie was in a sorry state, the aura around him was even stronger than before. Slut! Elder Xie looked at Luo Qingtong as if he wanted to eat her alive. He had been accumulating strength for many years and was waiting for the right time to break through to the Saint Sovereign realm. This way, he could consolidate his realm and it would be more beneficial for his future advancement. But now, under the attack of the dragon, he had no choice but to use so much of his stored strength to forcefully break through the barrier between the Saint Sovereign realm and the Saint Sovereign realm. Although he was fine, he had completely cut off his path of advancement. Just based on this point alone, he wouldn't be able to vent his hatred even if he ate Luo Qingtong alive. This slut! This slut! Elder Xie's anger reached the heavens. At this moment, he didn't have the slightest bit of romantic feelings for Luo Qingtong. He wanted to capture Luo Qingtong and use the most vicious and sinister method to torture her to death. Only then would he be able to vent the hatred in his heart. Ah! Elder Xie roared furiously. In the next second, he suddenly flew up. Like a vulture, he opened his sleeves and attacked Luo Qingtong. Elder Xie didn't hold back in this attack. The strength of a Saint Sovereign Realm expert was revealed without a doubt. Although using the strength of a sage expert to deal with a martial emperor girl was really too much of a waste of talent. However, Elder Xie had suffered so many losses at the hands of Luo Qingtong. It was impossible for him to treat her as an ordinary martial emperor. Which martial emperor realm expert could escape from his hands one after another, and which martial emperor realm expert could make him so miserable? He would use all his strength to capture this woman and not give her any chance to escape or fight back. At this moment, Elder Xie had already treated Luo Qingtong as an expert of the same level as him. This woman was too cunning and had too many strange tricks up her sleeves. Rumble. The power around Elder Xie was extremely violent. From the moment he leapt up, the waves of energy extended from where he was, causing the surrounding air to tremble violently. The surrounding mountains were also trembling. Ravines and crevices were formed. Countless boulders and trees began to collapse under the tremors. Around Luo Qingtong, countless spiritual energy condensed into a domain, enveloping the space around her. Saint Sovereign Realm, condensing spiritual energy into a domain. In the Saint Domain, all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had to listen to his orders and be controlled by him. Others couldn't snatch it. Buzz. As soon as the Saint Domain appeared, all the spiritual energy around Luo Qingtong froze, imprisoning her inside. Slut, let's see how you're going to run now. Elder Xie's face was full of malevolence. He appeared in front of Luo Qingtong in an instant and grabbed her fiercely. Chapter 1125. Scram. An incomparably cold voice resounded through the sky. As this voice sounded, in an instant, the entire mountain range and even the air trembled violently. The spiritual energy that had been imprisoned around Luo Qingtong instantly boiled up. Then, bang! 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 Countless violent sounds rang out. In an instant, the sacred domain that froze the space around Luo Qingtong shattered. What? Seeing this scene, Elder Xie's eyes suddenly widened. His hands were still in the posture of grabbing Luo Qingtong, but the expression on his face was horrified to the extreme. A single voice was enough to shatter his saint domain. How strong was the other party? Could it be a powerhouse above the saint realm? But how could there be such a powerhouse in the true Spill continent? This place was simply, wait. Suddenly, Elder Xie seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes widened. His bulging eyes looked as if they were about to pop out of their sockets at this moment. There was someone who could do this. But how could it be? How could the other party inexplicably attack him? Just as Elder Xie was horrified, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly lit up. She recognized the voice. Yi Qianxian. She was about to turn around when a man's voice rang in her ears. Don't worry about me. This Elder Xie, how did he deal with you before? Bully him back for me. Behind her, Yi Qianxian stood in the air, wearing a silver robe, looking down at the 9 heavens. Okay. Listening to the man's domineering words, Luo Qingtong's eyes instantly curved. Her figure leaped up in an instant. In the next second, the life and death dual polarity sword appeared in her hands. Heaven battling art. Luo Qingtong fiercely slashed out with her sword. Elder Xie, who was still immersed in his shock, didn't notice it and was immediately sent flying. Bastard! Elder Xie smashed onto the ground with his face covered in dust. His originally distressed appearance became even more unbearable. A dignified Saint Master was sent flying by a martial emperor. Shame and humiliation caused Elder Xie's body to tremble violently. He slammed the ground with a bang and was about to fly up to teach Luo Qingtong a lesson. However, just as he was about to move, an extremely terrifying pressure descended on his body, ruthlessly suppressing the power that was about to overflow from his body. Pooh! Elder Xia was unable to use his power and was suppressed instead. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Ming Zun. He looked at the silver-robed man who appeared behind Luo Qingtong in shock. His expression was extremely shocked. How? Why did Ming Zun suddenly attack him? Before Elder Xia could come back to his senses, boom! Luo Qingtong's next sword light arrived. In an instant, he was like a huge rubber ball. With a boom, he was sent flying by Luo Qingtong's sword light again. Bang, bang, bang. The sword light in Luo Qingtong's hand slashed out again and again. Old dog, did you have fun chasing me just now? Luo Qingtong's smile was indescribably evil and enchanting. However, the gaze in his eyes was extremely cold and callous. She remembered all the words that Elder Xia had said before. He wanted to snatch her treasure and train her by his side. She was going to grant him his wish. Chapter 11:26. Boom! 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 Luo Qingtong's sword light bombarded Elder Xia's body. Each of the sword lights slashed him into the sky and smashed him down. The defensive strength of a sacred expert prevented Elder Xia from suffering any injuries. However, the humiliation and embarrassment in his heart were indescribable. He was a sage master, but he was beaten up like this. The one who beat him was a young girl in the martial emperor realm. Elder Xia was going crazy with anger. However, he could not fight back at all. Ming Zun. He struggled and shouted in Yi Qianqian's direction while Luo Qingtong was attacking. I am an outer elder of Celestial Palace. This Luo Qingtong stole our precious beast, the gold-seeking hamster, and many of our treasures. Ming Zun, are you going to help this woman deal with our Celestial Palace? Elder Xia did not know why Yi Qianqian suddenly appeared to help Luo Qingtong. However, now that he had moved out of Celestial Palace, Yi Qianqian should have some scruples, right? After all, it was not worth it for Yi Qianqian to go against Celestial Palace for such a young girl, right? However, just as he spoke, Yi Qianqian's voice sounded, which made him completely dumbfounded. My woman would not do such a thing. Moreover, even if she did, it is not up to others to teach her a lesson. Yi Qianren's figure was in the air as he stared coldly at Elder Xia who had been sent flying. The latter was already stunned by his words. Woman. His woman. Elder Xia's eyes widened to the extreme. He looked at Luo Qingtong in front of him in disbelief, then looked at Yi Qianxian who was high in the air. He could not believe what he had heard. Luo Qingtong was Yi Qianxian's woman. Wasn't it said that Blackfield's Ming Zun was infatuated with evil Dr. Gui Tong, that legendary young man? How could it be Luo Qingtong again? Wait! Thinking of this, Elder Xia's body suddenly stiffened. Luo Qingtong. Evil Dr. Gui Tong, he quickly connected the two of them in his mind. When he thought of the various methods Luo Qingtong used to avoid his attack, he was shocked to the extreme. You are evil Dr. Gui Tong. Luo Qingtong looked at him indifferently. She did not speak. She just waved her hand, another sword light. Bang! This time, Elder Xia's entire body was smashed into the ground, leaving only his head above the ground. Coincidentally, there was feces from an unknown demon beast. Elder Xia's body was smashed into the pile of feces, and his head was stuck in the pile of feces. Elder Xia was on the verge of collapse. Bitch, kill me if you have the ability. I'm afraid you can't kill me. After knowing Luo Qingtong's identity, Elder Xia did not have any hope in his heart. His eyes were bloodshot. If not for the Blackfield's Ming Zun, what do you think you can do to me? Bitch! Bang! Luo Qingtong raised her hand and sent him flying again with a heavy sword light. Looking at Elder Xia, who was lying on the ground, she laughed coldly. If not for the Celestial Palace, what do you think you can do to me? Don't say I didn't give you a chance. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. She looked at him coldly and said carelessly. I asked the Lord to imprison your strength. You can only keep that sacred region. Chapter 11:27. Before Elder Xia could say anything, Bei Qing and the rest were shocked by Luo Qingtong's words. No. The city master of the Black Field of the Empire of Qin quickly said, Lord Evil Doctor, don't be provoked by his words. He has sealed all of his strength and power. As long as the sanctuary is around, no one can break through his defense. Yes. The other experts from the Black Realm who had transcended the saint stage also hurriedly said, Lord Evil Doctor, it was he who shamelessly attacked you first. You don't have to care about what he says. The group of people was extremely angry. They knew what had happened. Elder Xia had taken a fancy to Lord Evil Doctor's treasures. He thought that Lord Evil Doctor had no one to rely on, so he wanted to use the power of the Celestial Palace to snatch it from him. A transcendent sage dared to attack a martial emperor. He even threatened Lord Evil Doctor time and time again. How shameless! How dare he say that Lord Evil Doctor relied on the Lord? If Lord Evil Doctor relied on the Lord, he would not have the right to attack Lord Evil Doctor. As everyone thought about it, they immediately felt that Elder Xia was extremely shameless. However, Elder Xia was overjoyed. Luo Qingtong, is what you said true? Elder Xia was already prepared to die. Yi Qianqian's strength was not his match. Yi Qianxian did not even make a move. His aura alone was enough to suppress him. How could he fight? Elder Xia was disheartened after knowing that Luo Qingtong was his woman. That was why he scolded her. He did not expect Luo Qingtong to be so stupid. She wanted to compete with him just because of a few words. Ha ha ha. If not for the fact that the situation was not right, he would not have laughed and angered Yi Qianxian. Elder Xia really wanted to laugh out loud. Luo Qingtong was really a stupid woman. He did not expect Ming Zun of the Black Field to be infatuated with such an arrogant and stupid woman. But this was good too. If it wasn't for this, how could he have found a chance to escape death this time? Humph. Luo Qingtong snatched the sex treasure beast and had many treasures on her. When he returned to the Celestial Palace and reported to the Celestial Palace, he would definitely make her suffer. So what if Ming Zun in the Black Field was protecting her? Celestial Palace wasn't weak either. Moreover, the forces of the Black Field were not located in the hidden world. Unless Luo Qingtong decided not to go to the hidden world for the rest of her life, there would always be a chance to make a move. It was impossible for the Black Field's Ming Zun to guard her forever. As Elder Xia thought of this, he suddenly laughed coldly. Of course it's true. I never joke. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows and looked at his face, which was first surprised, then happy, and finally cold. Her eyes were indifferent, and her heart was pondering. She was waiting to play with him slowly. How could the grudge of being hunted down just now be vented by killing him? Good. I hope you can make the decision. As Elder Xia spoke, his gaze swept across Yi Qianxian. Her words are my words, said Yi Futian. The man's gaze was cold, and he was too lazy to look at Elder Xia. He raised his hand, and in an instant, Elder Xia felt that his strength and power were all confined. Not only that, his body's strength was also reduced. This man was simply terrifying. Elder Xia looked at Yi Qianxian who had confined his strength with just a raise of his hand, and his heart was filled with fear. This kind of strength, no wonder when they left the hidden world, they were strictly warned not to provoke him. However, it was a pity that he did not know that Luo Qingtong was his woman. Otherwise, he would never provoke him. Chapter 11:28. Elder Xia was extremely vexed. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's voice rang out. Begin. Elder Xia's heart skipped a beat when he heard her voice. Then, he hurriedly ran out. Yi Qianxian really kept his word. He only sealed his strength and power, making him as weak as an ordinary person. However, he could still use the sacred domain. Humph. Luo Qingtong, that bitch, thinks too highly of herself. So what if she has some tricks up her sleeve? This sacred domain can only be comprehended by a sage after reaching the Sage Master realm. It condenses the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual qi into a domain. Even if my strength is sealed, I can't support this domain. As long as I have this domain, it's equivalent to having a sacred domain's protective shield. She's just a martial emperor. How can she break my sacred domain? What a joke. She's so stupid. Elder Xia sneered. The sacred domain was the main means of defense for experts above the sage realm. Even if his sacred domain had just been condensed and was only half-formed, and his strength was sealed, he couldn't support the sacred domain's defense, but it was definitely not something that Luo Qingtong, a mere martial emperor, could break. She was so stupid that she let him go for no reason. Elder Xia was very pleased with himself when he thought of this. He kept running out at an extremely fast speed. However, because his strength were sealed, there was a limit to how fast he could run. Luo Qingtong looked at his running figure and narrowed her eyes. Lord Evil Doctor, seeing that Elder Xia was running far away and Luo Qingtong still didn't move, the city lord of the Black Field of the Empire of Qin suddenly became anxious. Could it be that Lord Evil Doctor had other plans? She deliberately wanted to let Elder Xia go. But there was no benefit in letting him go. If the Celestial Palace knew about this, they would definitely do everything possible to deal with Lord Evil Doctor. At that time, it would be troublesome. Just as the group was panicking, Luo Qingtong moved at this moment. She saw that Elder Xia was about to run out of her sight. The other party must be feeling very proud right now, right? Was he about to escape? Do you think I'm stupid? Don't worry, she would soon let him know, who was the fool. My lord, can I have a kiss? Just when everyone thought that she would chase after Elder Xia, Luo Qingtong's figure flashed and suddenly appeared beside Yi Qianxian. She raised her head and hooked her arms around the man's neck. She smiled sweetly and leaned towards Yi Qianxian with a devilish charm. The girl's red lips were burning, like the world's strongest wine, the most intoxicating flower brew. Yi Qianxian's eyes darkened. He immediately knew what she wanted to do. However, he gladly endured it. The man raised his hand, clasped the back of her head, and kissed her deeply. At the same time, he released the defenses in his body, allowing Luo Qingtong's power to enter. Buzz! The power in Yi Qianxian's body flowed continuously along with the girl's aura and poured into her body. Boom! Luo Qingtong's aura suddenly soared. His meridians began to ache from the sudden surge of power. Even though she was already a martial emperor, Luo Qingtong still couldn't determine the upper limit of Yi Qianxian's strength. Chapter 11:29. This was great. This way, she wouldn't have to worry about not having a goal to strive for and reaching the peak she wanted to surpass. She wouldn't be lonely in the future. This was because she knew that no matter what level she reached in the future, this man would definitely stand there and wait for her. This feeling of having someone waiting for her and traveling with her made Luo Qingtong's heart swell so much that it was about to jump out. She looked deeply at the man in front of her. Then, she sucked on the tip of his tongue. Under his dark and seductive gaze, Luo Qingtong smiled wickedly and suddenly escaped from the man's arms. "My lord, that's enough." She licked her lips wickedly. Then, she stood up and flew into the air. Crack! The life and death yin-yang sword in her hand instantly transformed into the shape of a death blade. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. She looked in the direction Elder Xie had fled in. Her pupil technique was quickly activated. The color of blood instantly filled her eyes like a waterfall. Luo Qingtong's red robe fluttered in the wind. The aura around her surged. The power that overflowed from her body caused the space to tremble faintly. The power of the sage state. The city lord of the Empire of Qin and the others who had never seen Luo Qingtong's abnormal power were shocked. How did the evil doctor's power suddenly increase so much? Where did she get so much power? Only Bei Qing, who had seen Luo Qingtong absorb Yi Qianqian's power to kill the sage state assassin from the Supreme Assassin Pavilion, remained calm. Rumble. The power around Luo Qingtong's body surged violently. The death blade in her hand was infused with the power in her body, and it instantly extended several meters. Heaven-conquering art. Luo Qingtong brandished the death blade in her hand. In an instant, there was a ray of light in the sky. The dark black sword light in her hand seemed to cut through the night and day as it flew towards Elder Xie. Luo Qingtong's eye technique was operating at lightning speed as she stared at the weakest point of Elder Xie's sacred domain defense. A sacred domain's defense could not be forcefully broken by anyone below the level of a sacred expert. However, Luo Qingtong had locked onto its weakest point. She could use the power of the sage realm to break through it. Saying that she relied on Mingzun. Then she would let him see what was called a true backing. Only she could rely on him. Only she could rely on him. Break. Rumble. Elder Xie was running with all his might. He felt that he had already run far away. When he looked back, he couldn't see the figures of Luo Qingtong and the others. Ha! As expected, Mingzun and the others didn't chase after us. Even heroes can't resist the charms of beautiful women. Unfortunately, that beauty is stupid. While he was laughing, he suddenly felt an oppressive pressure from behind him. He suddenly turned his head, only to see an extremely fast and dazzling sword light that seemed to have traveled through time and space, flying towards him. What? This sword light was clearly sent out by Luo Qingtong. But, how could she be so strong? Elder Xie stared at this sword with bulging eyes. Before he could react, in an instant, that sword light fiercely slashed his body. In the blink of an eye, he was slashed away. Bang! Elder Xie's figure fiercely smashed to the ground. But soon, he stood up. Ha! Luo Qingtong, you can't hurt me. Sacred domain can't be broken through by force unless one is a sage master. You. Chapter 1130. Elder Xie's eyes widened. He looked at the Saint Realm domain that enveloped his body in shock. Caw caw caw, the sound of fragments rising and falling continued to ring out. From the place where Luo Qingtong's sword slashed over, his Saint Realm protection was constantly shattering. Just as Elder Xie was laughing maniacally, the fine lines on it had also reached the end. The moment his voice came to an abrupt end, it shattered with a bang. No, no, no. Elder Xie's eyes widened as he watched the Saint Realm protection shatter. He desperately used his hands to pick up the fragments of the Saint Realm protection. But the shattered Saint Realm protection turned back into spiritual energy and quickly dissipated from his palms like snowflakes. No. No. Elder Xie's eyes were filled with extreme horror. One had to know that his strength and power had been completely sealed. Without this Saint Realm protection, he was no different from an ordinary person. By then, how could he escape from Luo Qingtong's attack? Damn it! How could this be? How could this be? How could she suddenly launch such a powerful attack? And even if she launched a Saint Realm attack, how could it break his Saint Realm protection? Elder Xia was about to cry. He didn't have the thought of crying when Yi Qianxian appeared, and he also didn't have the thought of crying when Luo Qingtong hit him like a rubber ball. At this moment, he really wanted to cry. If he had known that this Luo Qingtong was so abnormal, he definitely wouldn't have provoked her. He definitely wouldn't have. At this time, Elder Xia knew what was called deep regret. Luo Qingtong gave him the last hope of survival, but she ruthlessly destroyed it. This was more painful and unbearable than the despair he felt at the beginning. Bang! Just as he couldn't help but cry bitterly, Luo Qingtong's next sword light blasted and directly cut off his head. Luo Qingtong wouldn't allow a powerhouse like Elder Xia to have any chance to turn the tables. Otherwise, there would be no end of trouble. The reason why the other party had failed this time was because he had underestimated the enemy too much. If he had used all his strength at the beginning, he would not have had the chance to activate the Empire Protection Magic Array of the Imperial Palace of the Empire of Qin, let alone leave it. It was Elder Xia's underestimation of the enemy that gave her the chance. But Luo Qingtong couldn't give others the same opportunity. Bang! Elder Xia's corpse fell heavily to the ground. His power spread out. A translucent soul body instantly emerged from his body. Luo Qingtong flew over at this moment. Her eyes lit up when she saw this. Who would have thought that Elder Xia would directly become a ghost after his death? It seemed that he must have practiced a soul cultivation technique before. With this thought in mind, Luo Qingtong waved her hand and summoned the 100-ghost streamer from her ring. Ah! The translucent soul of Elder Xia was instantly absorbed by the 100-ghost streamer. At the same time, Luo Qingtong took out the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood and absorbed all the death energy around Elder Xia. In the future, these would be her trump cards against her enemies. After putting these two things away, Luo Qingtong turned around and prepared to find Yi Qianxian and the others. However, just as she turned around, a man's figure appeared beside her. Should we talk about the kiss just now? Chapter 1131. What do you mean by enough? Yi Qianxian pressed her against the tree trunk. His tall figure directly enveloped Luo Qingtong's petite figure. The man narrowed his eyes and looked at her dangerously. This sovereign still doesn't think it's enough. As Yi Qianxian spoke, he suddenly lowered his head and kissed Luo Qingtong's lips. Luo Qingtong wanted to say something, but her lips were sealed by the man at this time. Her eyes curved as she looked at the man's handsome face magnified in front of her. She immediately raised her hand, hooked the man's collar, and kissed him back. That kiss was deeper and more intense than Yi Qianxian's. How is it? Is it enough this time? The two separated their lips with a long silver thread. Luo Qingtong licked her red and swollen lips. She chuckled and asked seductively. Yi Qianxian looked at the tip of her pink tongue licking her lips. The light in his eyes dimmed even more. The dark waves in his eyes seemed to want to swallow Luo Qingtong whole. What if this sovereign says it's still not enough? He raised his hand and gently rubbed Luo Qingtong's red and swollen lips with his index finger. His coarse fingers slowly moved around on it, rubbing it. The man's gaze was deep, and he deeply seized her. It's still not enough. Luo Qingtong looked at the man in front of her with a wicked smile. She opened her mouth slightly. Yi Qianxian's fingers sank into her lips, as if she was holding it. The girl's warm breath and soft touch, as well as her soft and fragrant tongue, made Yi Qianxian's gaze darken in an instant. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded not far away. Master! Master! Look what I found! Ow, ow, ow! Little Pig ran over while carrying the little golden mouse on his back. Just as he saw Luo Qingtong, he didn't even have time to be happy before he came face to face with Yi Qianren's dark face. He saw Yi Qianxian pressing Luo Qingtong against the tree trunk, then saw Luo Qingtong's ambiguous action with Yi Qianxian's finger between her lips, and his eyes instantly darkened. Oh my God! I came at the wrong time. I'm dead, dead. Little Pig instantly cried out anxiously when he saw that he had obviously interrupted Yi Qianxian's good time. His four hooves flapped as he tried to stop his footsteps and ran back. However, the little golden mouse on its back didn't see anything wrong with the scene in front of him. Seeing its treasure in front of it was right in front of its eyes, Little Pig happily pounced towards Luo Qingtong. Squeak squeak. The little golden mouse's two little claws fluttered and hugged the hem of Luo Qingtong's dress. After tugging on the young girl's red dress a few times, it suddenly scurried onto her shoulder. Squeak 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 squeak. Great treasure. Great treasure. The little golden mouse happily squatted on Luo Qingtong's shoulder and used its round little head to rub against Luo Qingtong while acting cute. It even used its two little claws to hug Luo Qingtong's face. Ha ha ha. Luo Qingtong looked at the little golden mouse on her shoulder that kept acting cute, then looked at Yi Qianxian's dark face that was about to drip water. She couldn't help but laugh. She raised her head and kissed the man on the lips. Then she couldn't help but laugh out loud. Yi Qianxian fiercely ground his teeth when he saw her laughing so hard that she was convulsing. Then, he fiercely pulled her into his arms and bit her lips with neither too much nor too little strength. Chapter 1132. As he spoke, he clasped her hand tightly without hesitation. The 9 Netherworld Phoenix ring and the 10 Directional Dragon ring on the ring fingers of their left hands immediately interlocked with each other as their fingers intersected. The dragon and phoenix were connected, complementing each other. Okay. Luo Qingtong looked at him with a smile, then nodded with a smile. Tiandu, is that the place Elder Yu and the others mentioned? Luo Qingtong's smile was wanton. Since this man wanted to take her back, why wouldn't she dare to do it? Those who wished for this man to die early, just wait for me. As long as I'm here, I won't let anything happen to this man. Yi Qianxian had been waiting with bated breath for Luo Qingtong's answer. The moment the girl said, okay, the haze and coldness in his eyes disappeared. Like the spring breeze, the ice and snow melted. In an instant, the flowers bloomed like spring. Ha! He couldn't help but laugh. His 10 fingers tightly clasped the girl's soft hand, hating that he couldn't melt her into his flesh and blood. This lord will wait for you. Yi Qianxian looked at Luo Qingtong cautiously and said word by word. He would wait for this woman to fully mature and give her the most beautiful and best future. The matriarch of the Black Field was not the best position he could give her. Okay. Luo Qingtong nodded with a smile. She wouldn't let this man wait for too long. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she called Little Pig over. What did you say you found? At this moment, the latter was lying on the ground with her round and bare buttocks sticking out. Her 2 little hooves were covering her eyes, as if she had seen nothing and heard nothing. She looked like a dead pig that was not afraid of being scalded by boiling water. It couldn't be helped. Who told it to come at such a bad time? In a moment of excitement, it forgot that Luo Qingtong was with that man. Ow ow ow. Was there such a pitiful ancient divine beast? It was going to be ravaged again. Why was it so unlucky? It was one thing to meet such a perverted master. There was an even more perverted master by her side. The great ancient divine pig was suppressed to the point that it didn't even have a chance to turn the tables. Ah! Grandpa Pig's heart hurts. I don't know how to love. Just as Little Pig was groaning and crying in his heart, someone grabbed his tail and lifted him up. Hey! Get up, I'm asking you a question. Luo Qingtong lifted it with one hand and flicked its pink nose with the other. Why was it moaning and moaning by itself? Was Yi Qianxian that scary? If Little Pig knew about Luo Qingtong's inner thoughts, he would definitely tell her with extreme grief and indignation, "You don't understand Daddy's pain. Of course this stinking man isn't scary to you." To it, that was extremely terrifying. Little Pig could still remember the terrifying experience of being tied to the outside of the spirit ship as a flag. There was simply no explanation for the psychological trauma. It would ruin that man's plans. Little Pig could already foresee its miserable life. No, it was a pig's birth. Little Pig lay there for a long time, but Yi Qianxian didn't make a move. Instead, it was lifted up by Luo Qingtong. Ah! It let out a cry and let go of its two little hooves that were covering its eyes to cover its nose. Then, it saw Luo Qingtong looking at it calmly. Chapter 1133. Although Yi Qianxian had a cold expression on his face, he didn't show any signs of making a move. Ha! Is this a fantasy world? Little Pig's heart was filled with horror. This man actually didn't make a move to teach him a lesson. Although he didn't know why, Little Pig instantly came back to life. He quickly struggled and jumped down from Luo Qingtong's hand. Then, he hugged her thigh and said with a flattering expression, "Master, I found this." As it spoke, it hurriedly took out something from the waist ring on its little hoof. Luo Qingtong looked at the item that Little Pig took out and immediately raised her hand to take it. This is a map. She looked at the map marked on it and saw the three words, Sage Monarch's Tomb, at the top. She immediately raised her eyebrows. Sage Monarch's Tomb. How could it be so coincidental? Luo Qingtong thought of the Sage Monarch's Tomb map she obtained from the Jade Ring. How could there be another Sage Monarch's Tomb map here? Were these two maps marked the same place, or? Luo Qingtong looked at the map with a frown. Then, she took out the jade ring from her ring and displayed the map inside. As soon as the two maps overlapped, some terrains and outlines that had not appeared in the previous two maps vaguely appeared. Sure enough, they're together. Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up. She looked at the map, then looked at Little Pig and asked, "Where did you get this map?" Luo Qingtong asked. In fact, she already had a vague answer in her heart. This item was most likely obtained from Elder Xia. Sure enough, as soon as she asked, she heard Little Pig say, "From that Elder Xia." But that bastard is really too sinister. He knew he was going to die, so he threw this thing away halfway. If it wasn't for this guy's sharp nose, I'm afraid he would have fooled us. As Little Pig spoke, he raised his little hoof and pointed at the chubby little golden mouse squatting on Luo Qingtong's shoulder. The little girl puffed out her chest proudly, looking as if she was asking if she was very powerful. In the end, he even affectionately rubbed Luo Qingtong's cheek. Luo Qingtong chuckled and stroked it. Well done. If it wasn't for the little gold mouse discovering this map and allowing it to be discarded here, he was afraid that the people of the Celestial Palace would have recovered it when they found it. Luo Qingtong didn't think that Elder Xia didn't leave any clues on the map. It was even possible that he had left behind information about himself. Sure enough, just as she was thinking, Yi Qianren on the other side had already raised her hand and received the map. Then, a ball of light emerged from his palm and enveloped the map. Soon after, Elder Xia's wrinkled old face quickly appeared on the map. Luo Qingtong is the heretic Dr. Ghost Eye. She killed me and seized the sex-treasured beast. Avenge me. Avenge me. Before he could finish speaking, Yi Qianxian clenched his fist. In an instant, the light in the man's palm exploded and crushed the image that appeared into pieces. It's just an afterimage. Chapter 1134. There is no longer any mark of Celestial Palace on it. You can take it and use it as you wish. Even if the people of Celestial Palace were in front of you, they would not be able to sense that this map is in your hands, he said in a deep voice. Luo Qingtong nodded. She put the map into her ring and prepared to study it slowly when she returned. Let's go back first. Luo Qingtong still remembered that in the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin, there were still a few disciples of Celestial Palace that needed to be taken care of. Moreover, she might be able to get some information about the Saint King's tomb from them. At the same time, in the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin, the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin sat in the main hall with a look of uneasiness. The powerhouses of the Black Field outside had not yet evacuated and were eyeing the holy capital of the Empire of Qin covetously. Although the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin was not afraid of the other party's strength, this was only a Saint Realm powerhouse from a main city. There was more than one main city in the Black Field. The other party's dispatch of troops today represented the attitude of the entire Black Field. That was, if anything happened to Luo Qingtong, the Black Field would not let it go. The Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin could not understand it. Wasn't she just a student of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin? Even if she had some strength and was the holy conferred princess of the Great Chu's sacred dynasty, it was not worth the Blackfield's attention. One had to know that the Blackfield's Ming Zun had signed an agreement with the four dynasties. Now, the main city had dispatched troops to besiege the holy capital. Even if it was just a gesture, it was already a violation of the agreement. Under such circumstances, if it were not for the approval of the Blackfield's Ming Zun, the people of the Blackfield's main city would not dare to do so. Thinking of this, the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin was instantly frightened. This was what he was most worried about. Otherwise, the Blackfield's main city alone would not make him so flustered. The supreme transcendence of the Empire of Qin also frowned. He looked at Ma Chenyi, who was sitting next to him with a worried and anxious expression, and asked, "Do you know who Luo Qingtong is?" The sage emperor of the Empire of Qin seemed to have come to his senses and hurriedly asked Ma Chenyi, "That's right. Do you know if Luo Qingtong has another identity?" "I don't know." Ma Chenyi shook his head. "I know she has a deep relationship with evil Dr. Ghost Eye. When Tianya's royal family was destroyed, evil Dr. Ghost Eye helped her and the Luo clan." As he spoke, the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin flicked his sleeves. Nonsense. How could the Dark Region dispatch so many saint stage experts just because they have some relationship with each other? Or is this simply the evil Dr. Ghost Eye acting on his own? If that's the case, then the other party has gone too far. I'll ask them to leave immediately. As the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin said this, he flicked his sleeves and stood up. However, before he could reach the entrance of the main hall, Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian walked in through the door. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others followed behind the two of them. Even the Grand Principal, who had followed Bei Qing and the others to find Luo Qingtong, was among them. He looked at the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin and the others and shook his head. The sage emperor and the saint stage experts had made a big mistake this time. Ming Zun. The sage emperor of the Empire of Qin and the supreme transcendence of the Empire of Qin were shocked when they saw Yi Qianxian. Before the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin could react, the supreme transcendence of the Empire of Qin blocked in front of him. Bang! The supreme transcendence of the Empire of Qin stood in front of the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin. Chapter 1135. Ming Zun. The sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin was both shocked and angry. He didn't expect Yi Qianxian to appear here. He didn't expect him to attack them without saying a word. If it wasn't for Granduncle blocking Yi Qianren's attack, wouldn't something have happened to her? The sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin didn't dare to think about the consequences. But what he didn't know was that if Yi Qianren wanted to take their lives, not to mention a transcendent saint of the Great Qin Empire, even if all the experts of the Great Qin Empire who were in seclusion attacked together, they still wouldn't be able to stop him. Ming Zun. What do you mean? First, you Blackfield soldiers surrounded the holy capital. Now you're attacking us again. Just because Luo Qingtong has a relationship with the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. We don't care if you spoil your people. But you attacked the royal family of the Empire of Qin for an insignificant person. Isn't that too much? Don't think that the royal family of the Empire of Qin is a pushover. Your Blackfield might not be able to stop the combined forces of the four dynasties. The sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin was furious. Ming Zun was too much. For the sake of the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, he even interfered in the affairs of a student. So what if he didn't interfere in Luo Qingtong's affairs? Was it worth it for him to go against the royal family for her? He even attacked him. However, the sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin didn't finish his words. Yi Qianxian just glanced at him coldly and didn't say anything. But the grand principal next to him shook his head and stood up. Ah! Sacred Emperor, you've made a mistake this time. Luo Qingtong is the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. As he spoke, he glanced at the indifferent Luo Qingtong, who hadn't said a word or tried to stop Yi Qianxian. He sighed and said, I've already said that I won't protect Luo Qingtong. You'll regret it. The Grand Supreme Dean sighed in his heart. The Sage Emperor was truly too obstinate. Ma Qingyi repeatedly asked him to help Luo Qingtong, but he refused. Even if Luo Qingtong's identity as the holy conferred princess of Great Chu was exposed, he would only watch with folded arms. In the end, Luo Qingtong was forced out of the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. If the Sage Emperor had helped Luo Qingtong from the start, would things have turned out this way? That attack just now was what they deserved. In truth, if it weren't for Ma Qingyi helping Luo Qingtong and the Grand Supreme Dean helping her from the side, with that evil god Yi Qianxian's protective nature towards Luo Qingtong, it was likely that he would have attacked the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin today. He would have wiped out the entire imperial palace of the Empire of Qin from the face of the true Spill continent. What Four Dynasties Agreement? Only the Sage Emperor of the Empire of Qin and the others who didn't know Yi Qianxian's true strength would think that he would follow this agreement. The reason that Lin Ming hadn't attacked the four great sacred dynasties was because he wasn't interested. Did the Sage Emperor of the Empire of Qin really think that he feared the strength of the four great sacred dynasties? As the Grand Supreme Dean thought this, he suddenly recalled the scene of Yi Qianxian shattering Elder Xie's holy domain with a shout. A holy master's domain was shattered with a shout. What could the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin use to compare with Lin Ming? Even if all of the hidden powerhouses of the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin were to come out, they still wouldn't be Lin Ming's match. The only ones that could contend with Yi Qianxian were the several saint venerables of the hidden world. As the Grand Supreme Dean thought this, he shook his head and sighed. What? The Sage Emperor of the Empire of Qin was fiercely shaken. It wasn't just him, but the Saint Venerable of the Empire of Qin was also the same. Chapter 1136. The dignified Crown Prince didn't even know how to lift his feet. He almost stumbled and fell to the ground. You! Evil Dr. Ghost Eye! Ma Qingyi was both surprised and delighted. He raised his finger and pointed at Luo Qingtong, speaking incoherently. Thinking of the information she gave him before, thinking of her saying that she could help him get rid of the luck-stealing technique in his body, Ma Qingyi had always thought that Luo Qingtong was asking for evil Dr. Ghost Eye's help. But it turned out that she was evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Ma Qingyi thought of all the things Luo Qingtong had done all this time, the talent she had displayed, and the stunning ability she had against Elder Xie and the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. He had an inexplicable feeling that, the other party being evil Dr. Ghost Eye was completely unexpected, but within reason. In the past, he had wondered what kind of appearance a young man like the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, who was so astonishingly talented and devilish, would have. How stunning would the face and temperament under the Rakshasa ghost mask be? Now that he heard that Luo Qingtong was evil Dr. Ghost Eye, the image of the two people completely overlapped in his mind. Incomparable compatibility. Ha! As expected of a jade pearl, it should shine brightly. Ma Qianye's heart was filled with indescribable surprise. He thought of his evaluation of Luo Qingtong before, and suddenly felt that his evaluation of her was too low. Luo Qingtong wasn't just some pearl. She was clearly a rare luminous pearl from the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. Once it bloomed, its brilliance would be incomparably dazzling, illuminating the horizon. It was a pity that this kind of pearl had already been discovered by someone else first. She was properly protected in the hands and in the heart. Ma Qianyi looked at Yi Qianxian who was beside Luo Qingtong, and his heart dimmed. "Congratulations, Qingtong," he said sincerely. Since Luo Qingtong was evil Dr. Ghost Eye, then the trouble of Elder Xia and Celestial Palace was no longer trouble. At the very least, under that man's protection, it would not be considered as trouble at all. Thinking of his previous powerlessness, Ma Qianyi felt bitter in his heart, but he was still sincerely happy for Luo Qingtong. In this way, Luo Qingtong would not be afraid of the threat from Celestial Palace. "Thank you." Hearing the happiness in Ma Qianye's voice, Luo Qingtong chuckled and nodded at him. Then, he raised his hand and tugged at Yi Qianxian's sleeve. He whispered, "My lord, just teach him a lesson. After all, the Grand Supreme Dean and Ma Qianyi have helped me a lot." Yi Qianxian ignored her. He had just returned and found out that Luo Qingtong was in the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. She used her eye sorcery to activate the protection of the Empire of Qin. She should have been fine. However, Elder Xia thought that the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin secretly activated the Empire of Qin to protect her, so he threatened her with Ma Qianye's death. This made her give up the protection of the Empire of Qin and leave the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. Thinking of this, Yi Qianxian felt a burst of depression in his heart. Looking at Ma Qianyi and the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin, everyone's eyes were filled with murderous intent. This time, if he had not suddenly rushed back, who knew if this woman would have fallen into the hands of Elder Xie? Thinking of the dirty thoughts that Elder Xie had towards Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian could not restrain his urge to kill. This time, the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin could not absolve themselves from the blame. Chapter 1137. My lord. Luo Qingtong tugged at his sleeve and shook it gently in a place where no one could see. "Can you just stop now?" Luo Qingtong whined coquettishly. Seeing that Yi Qianren still hadn't moved, she called out again, "Qianren." Her voice was so high that it almost reached the sky. Finally, Yi Qianxian moved. He grabbed Luo Qingtong's hand that was tugging at his sleeve and pulled her into his arms. "You vixen." He gritted his teeth and transmitted his voice. If one looked closely, they would find that his ears were red. He looked at Luo Qingtong with a burning gaze. "If you call me that from now on, I will let them go." Yi Qianxian looked at the little woman in his arms and transmitted his voice with a cold snort. In order to stop him from making a move, this woman had even resorted to acting coquettishly. But the effect was damn good. Yi Qianxian was used to seeing Luo Qingtong's strong and charming side. He really couldn't resist her delicate and charming side. This vixen. Yi Qianxian looked angrily at the woman in his arms who was smiling wickedly. "Okay." Luo Qingtong looked at him panting with anger, but he had no choice but to compromise. She secretly laughed. She nodded with a smile. Yi Qianxian snorted coldly. In the end, he didn't make a move against the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin. According to his original plan, the royal family of the Empire of Qin almost caused Luo Qingtong to get into trouble. He had to teach them a lesson and let them know the price of angering him. But since this woman didn't want to pursue the matter, then forget it. Yi Qianxian closed his eyes slightly. After pulling Luo Qingtong into his arms, he ignored the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin and the others. The latter and the others saw this scene. Even if they didn't know what Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian secretly talked about, they could guess that it was Yi Qianxian who stopped him from making a move. Everyone was instantly ashamed. Especially the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin. Luo Qingtong saved him before, gave him the antidote of the bewitching drug, and helped him see through Mo Qinchuan's conspiracy. No matter what, he should have helped her when Elder Xie made a move against her. But he didn't do it because he was afraid of getting into trouble. To put it nicely, this was a wise move to protect himself. To put it bluntly, he was an ungrateful person. Fortunately, Ma Qinyi and the Grand Dean did their best to help Luo Qingtong before. Otherwise, today's matter would definitely not be settled. The Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin felt guilty and didn't know what to say at all. On the contrary, the sage transcendents beside him only knew how powerful Yi Qianxian was after he took one move from him. Yi Qianxian didn't seem to use much strength, but he was already a little overwhelmed. If he used all his strength, he and the Holy Emperor would have been dead. He was shocked, and at the same time, he was secretly glad that Ma Qinyi did his best to help Luo Qingtong before. Otherwise, the royal family of the Empire of Qin would really be doomed. Thinking of this, he immediately said to Luo Qingtong, "This time, the royal family of the Empire of Qin is indeed in the wrong. Thank you for not pursuing the matter. I can assure you that from today on, no one can threaten Ma Qinyi's position as the crown prince. The future candidate for the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin will definitely be him. If he wants, he can try to take over the state affairs of the Empire of Qin now. I won't stop him." Chapter 1138. The Saint Transcendents from the Empire of Qin's holy dynasty could see clearly. Since Luo Qingtong didn't pursue the matter with the imperial family of the Empire of Qin for the sake of Ma Qinyi, they would definitely be happy to help Ma Qinyi. Moreover, if Ma Qinyi was promoted, it would also be beneficial for them to repair their relationship with the Black Field. After all, the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin had offended him badly. Ming Zun didn't pursue the matter now, but it didn't mean that he would still have dealings with the imperial family of the Empire of Qin in the future. This was a great loss to the imperial family of the Empire of Qin. As soon as the Saint Transcendents from the Empire of Qin's holy dynasty said this, the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin immediately reacted and hurriedly said, "That's right. If Yi is willing, he can follow me to handle the state affairs now." The Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin had been taking bewitching drugs for several years in a row, and his body had suffered great damage. He originally wanted to slowly hand over the state affairs to Ma Qinyi. Now, the Saint Transcendence's words were exactly what he wanted. He could also take the opportunity to express his goodwill to Luo Qingtong. Why not? He almost didn't hesitate at all and agreed to this matter. Luo Qingtong naturally knew what they were thinking, but this was indeed beneficial to Ma Qinyi. Since they expressed their goodwill, she would accept it. It could be considered as returning the favor to Ma Qinyi for protecting her. Okay. She nodded at the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin and the Saint Transcendents from the Empire of Qin, indicating that this matter was over. Seeing this, the two of them immediately breathed a sigh of relief. However, soon, Luo Qingtong's next sentence made their hearts jump again. "However, I still want to borrow someone from you. That person's life, death, honor, and disgrace will all be at my disposal. I don't know if you are willing to." Who do you want to borrow? The Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin looked at her and asked cautiously. He was afraid that she would say that she wanted to borrow him. He had just learned how powerful Yi Qianxian was from the Saint Transcendence from the Empire of Qin. At this moment, he was frightened and even more regretful of what he had done before. He was afraid that Luo Qingtong would let the imperial family of the Empire of Qin off and would settle the score with him. But soon, the name Luo Qingtong said made him heave a deep sigh of relief. Mo Qinxian Mo. Transcendence from the Empire of the Empire of the Empire of Qin. From now on, he is, the imperial family of the Empire of Qin can't interfere. The imperial family of Qin. Mo, and she transcendence of Li. Of. Transcendence. Yi was. Had, he. Of Yi of Yi, of Yi. King Yi of. Originally, she had planned to let Mo Qinxian be imprisoned for a period of time after his position as king of Qin was taken away. When he was almost forgotten, she would ask someone to get him out secretly. After all, he was a descendant of the imperial family of the Empire of Qin. Even if he was abolished, she could not do whatever she wanted to him. But now, it saved her a lot of trouble. She could just ask the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin for him. The Holy Emperor of Qin felt guilty to her and wanted to mend their relationship. When he saw that she did not want him, but that rebellious and unfilial son who dared to plot against him, how could he say anything else? Naturally, he waved his hand and agreed to it directly. He personally wrote an imperial edict, allowing Luo Qingtong to go directly to the prison to get him. In the prison of the holy capital of the Empire of Qin. Mo Qinxian was in prison and his face was full of annoyance and disappointment. He just couldn't understand how the matter of him drugging the Saint Emperor had been discovered. He had done it so secretly. The people by the Saint Emperor's side had all been controlled by his bewitching drugs. Chapter 1139. How could he be found out? And the evidence was so irrefutable that he couldn't even make a comeback. But fortunately, Mo Qinxian sneered. He felt the abundant dragon qi in his body, and the depression in his heart was swept away in an instant. Even if the sage emperor found out that he had drugged him, so what? At most, he couldn't control him and establish an advantage in front of Ma Qinyi. He still had one last trump card. The sage emperor wouldn't have thought of it, right? Ma Qinyi's bloodline power and dragon qi in his body were almost exhausted by him. How could such a crown prince be able to support the whole the Empire of Qin? Sooner or later, his father would come back and beg him. At that time, he would still be the king of the Empire of Qin. Or even the ruler of the whole the Empire of Qin. Mo Qinxian was full of confidence, fighting spirit, and hope when he thought of this. He kept touching the point in his mind where he was connected to that heavenly Doctor Divine Hand. He hoped to get in touch with him as soon as possible and ask him to help him absorb the last bit of dragon qi in Ma Qinyi. In this way, he could leave this prison as soon as possible. Just as Mo Qinxian was trying to contact Feng Wan, the latter also came out of the secret realm that the wisp of smoke took her to. After being grounded for a few months, Feng Wan seemed to be locked up in her residence of the Princess Royal. In fact, with the help of the wisp of smoke, she had already hidden from the transcendent sage of Great Yong and went to the secret realm that the wisp of smoke had chosen to cultivate. At this time, her strength had completely stabilized at the peak of the martial spirit realm, and she was very close to the sage realm. But no matter what, she couldn't break through, so she came out of the secret realm. She also wanted to see how the situation was in the Empire of Qin. According to her estimation, the dragon qi in Ma Qinyi's body should have been absorbed by Mo Qinxian. Soon, the great Qin sage emperor would be controlled by her bewitching medicine. The two rulers of the Empire of Qin had been crippled, so it would be easy for her to take control of that colossus. However, Feng Wan's plan was perfect. He did not expect that when he came out, he would be greeted with such a situation. What did you say? As soon as he came out, he received Imo Chinchuan's voice transmission. Feng Yuan thought that Imo Chinxian was calling to tell him that he had succeeded and no longer needed him. She sneered in her heart and secretly scolded Imo Chinxian for being an idiot who didn't even know that he had fallen into her trap. But he didn't think that the other party would tell him such a piece of news. You failed to drug the Sage Emperor. Feng Yuan's voice was cold and harsh. Compared to Imo Chinchuan's predicament, she was more concerned about the failure of drugging the Emperor. Did that mean that she would no longer be able to control him? If that was the case, how was she going to control the empire of Qin dynasty? You idiot, how do you do things? At this moment, Feng Yuan was furious. For a moment, she didn't care about hiding her real voice and immediately shouted angrily. Mo Qinxian, this idiot. Such a simple matter was going to be messed up by him. How long did she spend to drug the Sage Emperor of the Empire of Qin? How much effort did she put in? Otherwise, did he think that he, a prince who had just risen and hadn't even replaced Ma Qingyi, could so easily lay hands on the people around the Sage Emperor of the Empire of Qin and drug them to control them? Feng Yuan was furious. At this moment, her face was cold and harsh. Chapter 1140. How dare you? Suddenly hearing Feng Yuan's real voice, Mo Qinxian was stunned. He was a little surprised that she was a woman and had been hiding her identity. But very quickly, he was awakened by her scolding. He shouted angrily, "How dare you insult me? Who do you think caused me to be like this? If it weren't for the fact that your medicine didn't work and was found out, how could I be like this now? And I can't absorb the dragon qi in Ma Qingye's body. This king's good hand of cards has been ruined by you. I haven't scolded you yet. How dare you insult this king? You are such a sneaky bitch." Mo Qinchuan's face was full of anger. He vented all his losses during this period on Feng Yuan. In an instant, the latter was so angry by his words that she leaned back. On the other side of the voice transmission, Feng Yuan couldn't wait to rush over and kill Mo Qinxian. This idiot actually called her AB*TCH after ruining her plans. Who was the one who ruined her good hand? Why did she choose such a brainless idiot before? She thought he was easy to control. Now, she had shot herself in the foot. Feng Yuan was so angry that she was trembling all over. After a long while, she tried to calm down. She calmly recalled Mo Qinchuan's words, and then keenly grasped the key point. You said that you can't absorb the dragon qi in Ma Qingye's body. How could this be? That was the method of seizing luck that she personally cast for Mo Qinxian and Ma Qingyi. No matter how strong the dragon qi in the latter's body was, it could only be robbed. Feng Yuan relied on this method to rob the power of the bloodline of countless royal children of Great Yong and integrated all of it into her body, making her the first princess and the first genius. She had never failed. Even the transcendent saints couldn't tell. Why could she suddenly not get the dragon qi in Ma Qingye's body? Yes. Mo Qinxian gritted his teeth and said, "Ever since he got the 7-leaf blood refining lotus, I can no longer absorb his dragon qi." Didn't you say that the 7-leaf blood refining lotus wouldn't affect your luck seizing technique too much? What's going on now? Now that I've been locked up in the imperial prison and the fact that I drugged imperial father has been exposed, there's almost no chance for me to make a comeback. Only this dragon qi is left. Immediately cast a spell for me and absorb all the dragon qi in Ma Qingye's body. At that time, the true dragon blessing in his body will shatter. Even the ancestral temples would be shaken. He could no longer remain as the crown prince. At that time, I'll be able to get out. This is my only chance to turn things around. You have to help me. Otherwise, I will tell Imperial Father that you were the one who gave me the bewitching drug. Mo Qinxian didn't tell Feng Yuan that the Emperor of the Empire of Qin already knew that she was the one who drugged Ma Qinyi and was sending people to track her down. He wanted to threaten her to help him, so that she wouldn't withdraw completely in order to protect herself. After all, he didn't know anything about her. At this time, Mo Qinxian suddenly realized how deep this heavenly holy doctor had been hiding. He didn't know anything about her, and he didn't even know whether she was a man or a woman before, but he trusted her so much. Chapter 1141. Thinking of this, Mo Qinxian broke out in a cold sweat. After he succeeded, he must find the other party and kill him to prevent future troubles. Thinking of this, Mo Qinxian suddenly remembered Feng Yuan's real voice. No one knew that he had a special ability, which was to imitate the voice of anyone he had heard. As long as it was a voice he had heard, he could imitate it. Then he would ask people to find the person according to the voice. I must find this heavenly divine doctor and kill him. Mo Qinxian thought of this, but did not know that Feng Yuan also wanted to kill him. If she could not control the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin, what was the use of keeping this idiot? There were thousands of descendants of the royal family of the Empire of Qin. Did he really think that she had to find him and help him to the throne? After being a martial king for a period of time, he really thought that he was a noble descendant. He had completely forgotten what he was like before, hadn't he? He even dared to call her a bitch. Feng Yuan sneered. She had already sentenced him to death in her heart. Seize the dragon energy in Ma Qinye's body for him. Of course she would seize it for him. Not only that, she would also seize all the power and aura in his body. It was time to eat a piece of fat meat that she had kept for so long. After seizing the dragon energy in Ma Qinye's body, she would absorb all the power and aura in his body. By then, she should be able to achieve her goal of breaking through the Saint Realm, right? Thinking of this, Feng Yuan's smile became even colder. The skill of seizing luck that she taught Mo Qinxian was originally tampered with. Unfortunately, the other party did not know that he was just a pig that she had kept. After she killed him and absorbed his power, she would find a chance to help a descendant of the royal family of the Empire of Qin rise to the throne. Wasn't it the same? Idiot! Feng Yuan's eyes were cold as he replied, okay. I will help you. Tonight at midnight, I will activate the skill of seizing luck for you and seize all the dragon energy in Ma Qinye's body. You just have to wait. Just wait for death. Feng Yuan sneered. At the same time, she also wanted to see what was causing trouble in Ma Qinye's body. It actually prevented the art of seizing fate in Mo Qinxian's body from absorbing his dragon qi. There was no way it was a 7-leaf blood refining lotus. Feng Yuan was very clear about this. She thought of the fact that Mo Qinxian had drugged her. Could it be that the Saint Emperor had already sensed something at that time, and also discovered that something was wrong with Ma Qinye's body? Then, he asked the Saint Transcendence to stop the art of seizing fate from absorbing the dragon energy in Ma Qinxian's body. If that was the case, it was not impossible. After all, the amount of heaven and earth spirit qi that a transcendent saint could use was astonishing. If he wanted to stabilize the dragon energy in Ma Qinye's body and prevent it from being absorbed by Mo Qinxian, it was still possible. However, that was only when the art of seizing luck in Mo Qinxian's body was operating on its own. If she activated it, then no matter how the other party tried to stop her, he wouldn't be able to stop her. As Feng Yuan thought of this, she suddenly smiled proudly. When she broke through to the saint state, she wanted to see what evil Dr. Ghost Eye and Luo Qingtong could use to compete with her. By then, she could completely merge with the heaven and earth elixir fire that the wisp of smoke gave her and directly become an alchemist. So what if I don't have the talent to become an alchemist? I have the elixir fire and can still become an alchemist directly. Evil Dr. Ghost Eye, I will never lose to you. Chapter 1142. Feng Wan sneered. The grand event about the hidden world was about to begin. At that time, she would make Luo Qingtong lose face in front of thousands of people and make her suffer a fate worse than death. Just as Feng Wan and Nemo Qinxian cut off contact, Luo Qingtong also came to the celestial prison with the imperial edict personally issued by the Emperor of the Empire of Qin. Seeing Nemo Qinxian sitting in the cell, Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed slightly. The bloody light in her eyes burst out, and then she laughed softly. It seems that I came at the right time. She looked at Nemo Qinxian meaningfully. With Luo Qingtong's eyesight, she naturally saw that the skill of seizing fate in Nemo Qinxian's body seemed to have been touched by someone. Besides Nemo Qinxian himself, who else could touch the skill of seizing fate in his body? Naturally, it was that heavenly doctor. Looks like you've made contact with that heavenly medicine sage. That saves me a lot of trouble. Luo Qingtong originally thought that when she was nourishing Ma Chenye's dragon qi, she would exchange blows with the heavenly doctor who was hiding behind Mo Qinxian. She missed him very much. She missed the treasures he gave her. However, the other party did not take any action. Luo Qingtong was quite disappointed. Now that she was about to reverse the skill of seizing fate in Mo Qinxian's body, that heavenly doctor suddenly appeared. What a pleasant surprise! It was not in vain that she did not even bother to interrogate those outer disciples of the Celestial Palace and directly came to see Mo Qinxian. Luo Qingtong laughed softly. That clear laughter was so pleasing to the ears of others. But in Mo Qinxian's ears, it was as if he had seen a ghost. You. He looked at Luo Qingtong in horror and raised his trembling hand to point at her. He did not know how she knew that the heavenly doctor behind him was that heavenly doctor. She also knew that he had just contacted the other party. This woman was simply too terrifying. In the past, Mo Qinxian looked down on Luo Qingtong and thought that she could only be his slave. Before Luo Qingtong came in, Mo Qinxian still looked down on her. However, he did not expect that the other party would actually expose the matter of the heavenly doctor divine hand behind him. In an instant, cold sweat trickled down his forehead. Mo Qinxian felt that he had underestimated Luo Qingtong all this time. He had always thought that this young girl from the Marquis's mansion from an inferior country only had a little talent. But now, it seemed that the other party was not as simple as having a little bit of talent. Mo Qinxian suddenly realized that ever since Luo Qingtong came to the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin, he had been having a hard time. Let's not talk about the fact that he couldn't absorb Ma Chenye's dragon energy. But every time he wanted to deal with Luo Qingtong, he would be rebuked by her. Was this just a coincidence? In the past, Mo Qinxian only thought that it was the Grand Dean and Ma Chenye who protected Luo Qingtong, so he had to go back. But now, he suddenly thought of something. Why would the other party protect Luo Qingtong? What did this girl from the inferior Eastern Fence country have that was worthy of their protection? Mo Qinxian was shocked. For the first time in his life, he felt that he seemed to have overlooked something. He was just about to trigger the connection in his mind and tell the heavenly doctor what he had discovered and ask her to be careful. Luo Qingtong knew about their relationship. Chapter 1143. That won't do, Your Highness. Luo Qingtong's face was full of smiles. I still want to have some fun with this heavenly doctor sage hand. You can't ruin my plan. Since Luo Qingtong dared to tell Mo Qinxian that she knew about them, she was not afraid that he would tell the news to the heavenly doctor. She waited for him to make a move and see if he was the one she thought he was. Take him away. Luo Qingtong ordered calmly. As she waved her hand, Mo Qinxian suddenly found that two internal guards of the imperial house of the Empire of Qin walked towards him. What was going on? Mo Qinxian looked at the two approaching internal guards in shock. He didn't know why the internal guards of the Empire of Qin would listen to Luo Qingtong's order. And he glanced around and found that everyone outside the prison was respectful to Luo Qingtong. He was still immersed in the shock of Luo Qingtong calling out his connection with the Heavenly Doctor and did not notice this. What's going on? This is the prison. I'm King Wu of the Empire of Qin. Even if I'm disabled, she has no right to tell me what to do. Let me go. Where are you taking me? Mo Qinxian struggled to be taken out of the prison cell. The two internal guards of the Empire of Qin firmly held him down and didn't give him any room to escape. Mo Qinxian wanted to use force at first, but the two internal guards directly dislocated his limbs and sealed his strength. Mo Qinxian was in so much pain that he broke out in a cold sweat. His handsome face was full of twisted expression. Let me go. Who allowed you to treat me like this? Ma Qinyi. How dare he treat me like this for this woman? I'm a member of the royal family. Father will not let him go if he knows. Before he could finish his sentence, the inner guard beside him had already laughed coldly. Your Highness King Wu, don't worry. You don't need to worry about the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince has been announced as the only candidate for the Crown Prince. He is the next successor of the Emperor. As long as he is willing, he can inherit the throne at any time. More importantly, the Emperor has promised him the ability to govern the country. So you don't need to worry so much. No matter what, the Crown Prince will be fine. But you. The internal guard sneered and looked at him and said coldly, it is the Emperor's order to hand you over to the Heavenly Doctor. Don't even think about struggling. Just leave with Lord Evil Doctor. Perhaps you can even die a good death. After all, His Majesty has already promised Lord Evil Doctor that she will control your life and death in the future. What? Hearing this, Mo Qinchuan's face turned pale. He stared at the inner guard in shock. He could not believe his ears. His father's order. And the Heavenly Doctor. What Heavenly Doctor? Mo Qinchuan stood tea in his mind, for words appeared uncontrollably, the Heavenly Doctor Ghost Eye. And the internal guard seemed to see the panic and speculation in his heart. He sneered and said, yes, it is the Heavenly Doctor Ghost Eye. Mo Qinxian, you didn't expect this, did you? Luo Qingtong is the Heavenly Doctor Ghost Eye. Chapter 1144. He slumped to the ground like a puddle of mud. The two guards didn't even look at him. They dragged him out of the prison like dragging a dead dog. When he was about to leave the prison, he saw the Imperial Guards and Ma Qinyi outside. When he saw the personal chamberlain of the great Qin sage emperor standing at the front, all the hope in Mo Qinchuan's heart was shattered. Evil Doctor Ghost Eyes. Luo Qingtong was really the evil Doctor Ghost Eyes. And it was really his father's order to let her deal with him. Mo Qinxian panicked in his heart. How could he talk about ambition if he lost his life? Luo Qingtong would never let him go. He wouldn't have any chance to turn the situation around. Even if he did absorb Ma Qinyi's dragon spirit in the end, so what? If he fell into the hands of Luo Qingtong, she would have countless ways to kill him. No. No. Luo Qingtong. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything about that Heavenly Doctor. Mo Qinxian struggled with all his might. He didn't want to die. Okay. Luo Qingtong looked at him indifferently. With her eyesight, she could naturally see that the skill of seizing fate in Mo Qinchuan's body was actually tampered with. He was bound to die, so she didn't need to do anything. That divine doctor should have made up his mind to kill Mo Qinxian from the beginning. Thinking of the bewitching medicine that the emperor of the Empire of Qin had been drugged, Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes and could already guess the other party's plan. She should want to use Imo Qinxian to destroy Ma Qinyi and control the emperor of the Empire of Qin. Then she would kill Imo Qinxian and absorb his strength. What a good plan. She not only got the Empire of Qin, but also gained strength. She also swept away all obstacles. What a deep thought. What a vicious heart. But unfortunately, she met her. Luo Qingtong asked someone to take Imo Qinxian to the Crown Prince's mansion. The latter told him everything. This included the fact that the heavenly sage doctor was a woman who had been hiding her identity all along. Furthermore, the other party was preparing to make a move tonight. A woman. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. That heavenly holy doctor was actually a woman. Was this a coincidence? The other party was related to Feng Wan and happened to be a woman. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes and smiled. The truth of the matter was getting closer and closer. At this moment, Imo Qinxuan's voice sounded again. Yes. The heavenly holy doctor was a woman. If she hadn't left a trace in her agitation, I wouldn't have known. I can imitate her voice for you. I want you to investigate her identity. But you can't deal with me. Luo Qingtong. Once you're done, you have to let me go. Don't hurt me, and don't torture me. Imo Qinxuan's body trembled. This was the only bargaining chip he could use to negotiate with Luo Qingtong. But he believed that Luo Qingtong would agree. After all, this was related to Ma Qinye's life and death. And that heavenly holy doctor was hiding in the dark. She would definitely want to know. He knew that the heavenly holy doctor and the evil Dr. Ghost Eyes had some grudges. Okay. Luo Qingtong looked at him and nodded carelessly. Perhaps Imo Qinxian himself didn't know that he was doomed. What was there for her to deal with someone who was bound to die? Chapter 1145. With Luo Qingtong's promise, Imo Qinxian relaxed at once. He imitated Feng Wan's voice. Hearing this voice, Luo Qingtong smiled. It's her. Feng Wan. She thought of the first princess of Great Yong, the first princess of Great Yong. She was the culprit who blinded the original owner's eyes and crippled her strength. She was targeted by the royal family of Tianyu and betrayed by her own sister. Luo Qingtong smiled meaningfully. Didn't Yuan Shui say that she was in love with Yuan Mo? She wanted to marry him, but she had to give up because of the engagement with her. So the royal family of Tianyu desperately targeted Luo Qingtong to make room for Feng Wan. How could she fall for Yi Qianxian in a blink of an eye? Thinking of the scene when she was in the capital of Great Chu, the heavenly doctor came to provoke her. If she had known that she was Feng Wan, she would not have let her out of the gate of the capital of Great Chu Black Field. Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. She didn't care who she liked. She also didn't care if she liked or loved. But if she liked Yi Qianxian, she couldn't. She couldn't let anyone touch her man. She's going to make a move tonight. Luo Qingtong looked at Imo Qinxian with a smile. The smile on her lips was faint and cold. The blood-red color in his eyes also shone brightly, as if it contained boundless killing intent. I'll wait for her. At the same time, in the Great Yong dynasty. After Feng Wan cut off the contact with Imo Qinxian, she immediately walked out of her Princess Royal's residence. Princess. The saint has ordered that you are still under house arrest and can't go out. The soldiers guarding outside directly put up their weapons and blocked her way. I want to see grandfather. I have something important to report. It's related to the fate of Great Yong. My luck has changed. Feng Yuan's expression was proud as he raised his head slightly and looked at the soldier. All of you, quickly go and report this matter to Imperial Father and Grandfather Bing. Because of the theft of Great Yong's fate, that saint transcendent from Great Yong did not immediately return to seclusion after being alarmed. Instead, he continued to deal with this matter. Furthermore, the affairs of the Great Yong dynasty had always been controlled by Feng Yuan. After the latter was grounded, there were a lot of things that no one knew how to deal with, so they all piled up there. The transcendent saint from Great Yong was so angry that he fiercely reprimanded the sage emperor of Great Yong. After that, he personally took care of these matters. He was in a terrible fix because of these matters. When he heard that Feng Yuan was looking for him, he immediately summoned him into the palace with a gloomy face. What do you want to say? Great-grandfather. Feng Yuan looked at this transcendent saint of the Great Yong sacred dynasty and bowed to him. I can restore the fate of Great Yong. It can even make it stronger than before. Great-grandfather, please give me a chance. Lend me the authority to control the ancestral temple temporarily. She said with certainty. Oh. The transcendent saint of the Great Yong sacred dynasty looked at her suspiciously. Are you really confident? Whether I am or not, great-grandfather, just wait and see. You will naturally know, Feng Yuan said proudly. After devouring the true dragon's fate and bloodline power in Ma Chen-ye's body, the fate of the Empire of Qin would definitely be shaken. At that time, she would be able to absorb some of it to replenish Great Yong's fate. At that time, Great Yong's fate would be restored and even stronger than before. She would also be able to return to her peak. She would regain the favor of the empire. Chapter 1146. Alright. The transcendent saint of the Great Yong dynasty looked at her for a long time and finally decided to trust her and let her try. After all, before she was grounded, she had never disappointed him. Otherwise, he would not have allowed Feng Yuan to surpass the Great Yong Emperor and control the affairs of Great Yong. In the eyes of this transcendent saint of the Great Yong dynasty, as long as Feng Yuan had the ability, so what if she wanted to become the invisible Great Yong Emperor? He could fulfill her wish. But if she did not have the ability and wanted to mess around, he would not let her off easily. Thinking so, the transcendent saint of the Great Yong dynasty immediately gave her the authority to control the ancestral temple. Thank you, great-grandfather. After Feng Yuan obtained the authority to control the dragon energy in the ancestral temple, her heart was filled with confidence. She would definitely make up for her mistakes and become the first princess of Great Yong again. She would be conferred the title of princess. The Empire of Qin Dynasty, the Crown Prince's residence. After knowing that Feng Yuan would take action tonight, Luo Qingtong immediately began her preparations. She had already stabilized the dragon energy in Ma Chen-ye's body. However, there was still something missing to reverse the luck-seizing technique. Luo Qingtong called Ma Chen-yi and Imo Chen-xian to her room at the same time and drew an inscription pattern on each of them. There was a small interlude in this. Luo Qingtong had just brought the two of them into her room when Yi Qianxian followed behind. The corners of Luo Qingtong's lips twitched as she looked at the tall man sitting on the soft couch in her room without moving an inch. Yi Qianxian's gaze was fixed on them. Luo Qingtong did not doubt that if she asked Ma Chen-yi and Imo Chen-xian to take off their clothes to draw the inscription pattern, Yi Qianxian would not hesitate to kill them both. Fortunately, Luo Qingtong's inscription technique had reached a very profound level. She had already grasped most of the intermediate-level inscription patterns and could draw a few high-level inscription patterns. Under such circumstances, it wasn't impossible for her to draw inscription patterns from afar. After all, not every inscription master required others to take off their clothes to draw inscriptions. As long as one possesses sufficient strength and a solid foundation, as well as a clear understanding of where the meridians of the human body are located, it doesn't matter. It just so happened that Luo Qingtong had all these points. Therefore, under Yi Qinqian's urgent gaze, she directly engraved inscription patterns on Ma Qinyi and Mo Qinxian through their underwear. The power in Luo Qingtong's hands entered their bodies through their undergarments. 2 inscription patterns formed in their bodies one after another. Mo Qinchuan's eyes were filled with horror as he watched the inscription mark enter his body and disappear. He had no idea what Luo Qingtong had done to him. This fear of the unknown made him very afraid. After being caught and brought to the Crown Prince's mansion, Mo Qinxian realized how ridiculous he had been to despise Luo Qingtong. The girl's ability was strange and unpredictable. Her strength and talent were very powerful. What's more, she had the protection of the Black Field, Ming Zun. What was wrong with him at that time? He had to make life difficult for Luo Qingtong. He even wanted her to be his slave. This was ridiculous. But fortunately, he saved his life with the help of the heavenly doctor. After tonight, he would leave here immediately. He would stay far away and never get involved in this matter. Chapter 1147. The ability that Luo Qingtong showed was really beyond his expectation. He didn't know what the inscription brand that entered his body was, but it didn't prevent him from perceiving the power of the brand. The dragon qi in his body, after perceiving the aura of the brand, suddenly surged, as if it was very excited and close to it. The girl's ability was so powerful and changeable. She should be the divine phoenix in the 9th heaven. Even if she came to the world, she would rest in the strongest parasol tree that was least afraid of being burned by her light. Ma Qinyi looked at Yi Qianxian, who held Luo Qingtong and left as soon as she finished the inscription, and felt an indescribable sense of loss and sadness in his heart. It was night. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The sky was clear. Large black clouds floated above the black night sky. Even though it was a pure black night sky, it still gave off a sense of clarity and solitude. The sounds of insects and birds were very clear in the quiet holy capital. The moon secretly showed its side face in the corner of the clouds, and a few stars were faintly discernible around it. Luo Qingtong stood in the middle of the main courtyard of the Crown Prince's mansion, and Ma Qinyi and Mo Qinxian stood on both sides of her. The two of them faced each other from a distance, and they were extremely far away from each other. There was also an extremely complicated defensive formation engraved on the ground beneath their feet. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes and waited. Just then, buzz. There seemed to be a faint trembling sound in the air. Luo Qingtong suddenly opened her eyes and looked in the direction of Mo Qinxian. The latter's body was trembling violently. The skill of seizing luck in his body began to operate wildly. Someone was using the mind to control the skill of seizing luck in his body from a distance. The bloody light in Luo Qingtong's eyes flickered, and she stared in the direction of Mo Qinxian without blinking. Suddenly, in the next second, boom! Mo Qinchuan's body suddenly trembled, and a very powerful force suddenly woke up in his body. Roar! In Luo Qingtong's pupil technique, a huge black flood dragon suddenly emerged from Mo Qinchuan's body. The head of the flood dragon was triangular, and it stuck out its tongue and floated above Mo Qinchuan's head. Hiss! In the distance, in the room that Luo Qingtong had specially prepared for them, the Grand Dean, Grand Tutor Jiang, and the others could see this scene through the visible brand carved by the girl. All of them gasped. Oh my God! Mo Qinxian had such a thing hidden in his body. No wonder His Highness the Crown Prince's strength has been stagnant all these years and has been forced to lay low. The Grand Supreme Dean couldn't restrain the shock and anger in his heart. So this was the reason why His Highness the Crown Prince had been unable to increase his strength all these years and was said to have reached the limit of his potential, unable to break through anymore. Mo Qinxian deserved to die. Grand Tutor Jiang and the others were the same. How could they not see that the black dragon in Imo Chinchuan's body had already grown dragon horns and dragon claws? It was only a step away from becoming a dragon. Thinking of Ma Chenye's silence all these years, how could they not know who was behind all this? But among them, the most hateful one was the heavenly doctor. If not for him, Mo Chinxian wouldn't have had the chance to absorb the power of fate and bloodline in Ma Chenye's body. Not to mention that he even wanted to control the Holy Emperor. Just when everyone was shocked. Chapter 1148. Its long and thick body was more than 100 feet long. The snake's head was ferocious, and when it crawled, it was indescribably ferocious and terrifying. The group of people watched it crawl out of Mo Chinchuan's body in an S shape. Its two huge eyes were as big as copper bells. In this dark night, its eyes were shining with coldness. Your Highness. Previously, no one knew why Luo Qingtong wanted Mo Qinxian to be so far away from Ma Chenyi. Now, when they saw the black dragon of luck crawling out of Mo Chinchuan's body, they knew why Luo Qingtong did this. The huge black dragon slithered towards Mo Chenyi, spitting out its forked tongue. The Grand Principal and the others in the room couldn't help but exclaim. Ma Chenyi was also shocked by the scene in front of him. He had the power of the real dragon bloodline, so he could naturally see the image of the black dragon in Mo Chinchuan's body. It turned out that this black dragon had been staying in Mo Chinchuan's body and absorbing his real dragon luck. Just as Ma Chenyi was thinking about this, with a buzz, a dragon shape suddenly appeared in his body. Roar! The dragon head was held high, and the dragon whiskers were flying. Above Ma Chenyi's head, an azure dragon suddenly appeared. Real dragon luck. Under the stimulation of the black dragon in Mo Chinchuan's body and the skill of seizing luck, the real dragon luck in Ma Chenyi's body also suddenly appeared and floated outside. Roar! Roar! The black dragon and the black dragon both raised their heads and stared at each other covetously. The Crown Prince of the Empire of Qin. Great Yong Sacred Dynasty, Princess Royal's residence. Feng Wuan sat cross-legged in her bedroom, using her mind to control the skill of seizing luck in Mo Chinchuan's body. At this moment, she felt the aura of the real dragon luck in Ma Chenyi's body suddenly emerge. Her eyes suddenly lit up, and a cold and ruthless smile appeared on her lips. Boom! Her hands suddenly formed a seal, and then her whole mind, following the connection with Mo Chinchuan's skill of seizing luck, suddenly rushed into the black dragon. Roar! After Feng Wuan poured his mind into it, the black Jiao dragon's eyes instantly lit up. His eyes, which were as big as copper bells, suddenly lit up like two huge lanterns. In the next second, it fiercely raised its head and opened its mouth wide. Then, it fiercely bit towards the azure dragon that had appeared from Ma Chenyi's body. Compared to the black flood dragon's body, it was much bigger. Ma Chenyi's true dragon providence was only a few feet long because it had lost too much of its power. Compared to the black flood dragon, it was much smaller. Seeing that the black dragon was about to bite Mo Chenyi was shocked. The Grand Principal, Grand Tutor Jiang, and the others in the room couldn't hold themselves back anymore. Your Highness. The group of people instantly became very anxious. They didn't know why Luo Qingtong hadn't done anything yet. Once the azure dragon was devoured, the real dragon providence in Ma Chenyi's body would be immediately broken. At that time, the fate of the Empire of Qin would be fundamentally shaken. Just as everyone was anxious, Luo Qingtong felt Feng Wuan's mind pouring into the black flood dragon. At the same time, after the black flood dragon had completely left Mo Chinchuan's body, the bloody light in her eyes suddenly lit up. In an instant, the bloody light filled her eyes like a waterfall. Seal. Chapter 1149. As Luo Qingtong suddenly pointed out two streams of energy from her hands, Puff puff. There was a sudden explosion in Imo Qinxian and Ma Qinye's bodies. The two inscription marks drawn on their bodies were instantly activated. Buzz! A seal mark suddenly appeared outside Imo Qinxuan's body. It cut off the connection between the luck-seizing technique in his body and Feng Wuan's side. At the same time, roar. 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 For loud roars that ordinary people couldn't hear suddenly resounded. A huge inscription mark pattern suddenly appeared around Ma Qinye's body. The inscription mark within the inscription mark flew out. All of a sudden, the lines were completed, drawing out the images of giant beasts one after another in the air. Screech! The sky was filled with fire rain, and the phoenix spread its wings. The phoenix cried in the sky. Roar! The violent roar, the white tiger leaped, and the king of beasts. Roar! The snake head and tortoise body, the black tortoise stepped on the ground, as firm as a rock. Roar! The dragon head was raised high, the green dragon stretched out its claws, and soared into the clouds. Sacred beast luck fixing diagram. The 4 sacred beasts appeared. Protect the azure dragon. Roar, 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 roar. For loud roars sounded, and the 4 sacred beasts suddenly appeared on the left and right sides of the azure dragon. Coincidentally, they surrounded the giant black flood dragon that was biting over in a frenzy. The phoenix spat fire, the white tiger showed its claws, the black tortoise protected, and the green dragon swung its tail. Together with the counterattack of the azure dragon above Ma Qinye's head, they rushed toward the giant black dragon. Rumble! The 6 giant beasts were suddenly entangled together. They kept rolling and fighting. His mind entered the black dragon, and Feng Wuan, who was controlling its attack, didn't notice at all. He was surrounded in an instant. In an instant, he was bitten by the 5 giant beasts. Roar! That huge black flood dragon suddenly began to churn in the dark night sky. The invisible shrill roar spread and drifted in all directions. Damn it! Who is it? The moment the black flood dragon was bitten, Feng Wuan knew that his luck-seizing technique had been seen through. Furthermore, according to the characteristics of her luck-seizing technique, he had specially prepared a way to break it. It wanted to completely devour her black flood dragon's luck here. Shaochen felt the luck in the black flood dragon continuously flowing into Ma Qinyi. The latter's aura instantly skyrocketed. Martial Spirit Realm. He had just entered the Martial Spirit Realm. Inferior Martial Spirit Realm, Feng Wuan was so angry that his eyes turned red. She was planning to keep this power for herself. No way. He had to go back immediately. Bang bang bang. She suddenly raised her head and swung her tail, using all her strength to control the black flood dragon to return. However, when she controlled the black dragon to rush toward Mo Qinxian, she found that the connection between the latter and herself had been cut off. Not only that, but a sealing mark also appeared outside his body. Bang! The black flood dragon controlled by Feng Wuan was suddenly bounced back by the sealing formation as if it had hit a steel plate. Then, the 4 sacred beasts and the azure dragon behind it transformed and immediately flew up to bite her again. Bastard! Feng Wuan was furious. In the Princess Royal's residence of the Great Yong Sacred Dynasty, Feng Wuan's face was red with anger, and her eyes were red as if they had been dyed. She couldn't understand who had seen through the luck-seizing technique she had set up and protected Ma Qinyi so well that not a drop of water could leak out. He had also calculated that she would seize the power in Mo Qinxuan's body. Now the luck-seizing technique was reversed. If she didn't think of a way, all the things she had done before would be in vain. Chapter 1150. Great Yong's fate, power of the true dragon, heed my command. Go! Feng Wuan's voice boomed. Within Great Yong's holy capital, a loud and proud sound suddenly rang out from the ancestral temple, which seemed to be floating above all the buildings and towering above the clouds. In an instant, an enormous dragon's body suddenly appeared and coiled around the temple. Its head was held high as it let out a long roar. Boom! 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 Countless strands of Great Yong's power of destiny suddenly surged out violently. In an instant, high up in the sky where no one could see, they gathered above Feng Yuan's residence. Boom! Boom! With the convergence of Great Yong's fate, Feng Yuan's mind was instantly strengthened. In an instant, the black flood dragon that she controlled suddenly shook its head. Roar! In the blink of an eye, countless golden lights appeared on the black Jiao dragon. A golden dragon instantly appeared above the black flood dragon's head. The blessing of Great Yong's fate. Bang! 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 Roar! When the golden dragon appeared, the four sacred beasts surrounding the azure dragon outside Ma Chenye's body instantly let out tragic cries. After a violent explosion, they suddenly shattered and turned into countless spots of light, disappearing into the night sky. What? Seeing this scene, the Grand Principal and the others were all shocked. This is the true dragon of Great Yong's imperial family, the golden dragon of the nation. Grand Tutor Jiang exclaimed when he saw the enormous golden light above the black flood dragon's head. No wonder the evil physician said that the heavenly doctor was related to Great Yong's imperial family. Now it seems that they are indeed related. He knew that Luo Qingtong had asked Ma Chenyi to investigate the heavenly doctor in the direction of Great Yong's imperial family. Now it seemed that the other party's suspicions were completely correct. Unfortunately, before they could investigate the identity of the heavenly doctor, the other party had already made things difficult for them. Great Yong is truly ambitious. Grand Tutor Jiang was furious. Previously, when Great Chu's imperial throne was almost stolen, it was inextricably linked to Great Yong. Are they targeting the Empire of Qin? What a huge ambition. Weren't they afraid that they would die from overeating? The Empire of Qin's sage emperor and that transcendent saint, who had already fallen asleep in the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin, saw the appearance of Great Yong's golden dragon of fate. Their hearts were suddenly stirred, and they opened their eyes. At the same time, in the imperial ancestral temple of the royal family of the Empire of Qin. Roar! Sensing the aura of Great Yong's golden dragon of the nation, the azure dragon of the Empire of Qin's ancestral temple also suddenly appeared. Rumble! The golden dragon of the Yong Empire abruptly circled above the ancestral shrine, its pair of dragon eyes glaring angrily at the golden dragon of Great Yong, who had dared to appear in its territory and even dared to attack the true dragon descendant of the imperial family of the Empire of Qin, which it sheltered. In a flash, the golden dragon of Great Yong let out a furious roar. Its entire body shot up and flew towards the golden dragon of Great Yong that had appeared in the Crown Prince's residence. Kill it! Ignoring the azure dragon of the Empire of Qin that was flying towards him, Feng Yuan's gaze was fixed on Ma Chenyi. In other words, he was staring at the image of the azure dragon that Ma Chenyi had revealed. Once the power of Great Yong's golden dragon of fate was used, it would cause the power of the azure dragon of the Empire of Qin to tremble. Feng Yuan had already prepared for this. Chapter 1151. It would take some time for her opponent to get here. This little bit of time was enough for her to control the black flood dragon to devour the power of the azure dragon outside Ma Chenye's body. At that time, the Empire of Qin's crown prince's true dragon luck would be cut off, and the power of the azure dragon of the Empire of Qin would be shaken and depleted. At that time, it would be enough for her to retreat. No one would be able to stop her from devouring Ma Chenye's true dragon luck. As Feng Yuan thought of this, he controlled the black flood dragon, which had shrunk in size and was riddled with scars. It suddenly raised its head and bit at the azure dragon outside Ma Chenye's body. Its eyes were ferocious and vicious, unlike an ordinary person. Roar! As the black flood dragon and the power of the golden dragon of Great Yong's national luck above its head violently rushed over. Suddenly, a series of explosions sounded around Ma Chenye's body. Under his feet, lines and lines of formations rose up. They formed layers and layers of protection around his body. However, the power of the national luck that Great Yong had accumulated over the years was too strong. Under such circumstances, those defensive formations could not stop the Black Flood Dragon and the Golden Dragon of Great Yong's national luck. Bang, bang, bang. The Black Flood Dragon controlled by Feng Wuan's mind was completely crushed. It directly shattered the protection around Ma Chenye. Its head was raised high, and its bloody mouth suddenly opened, biting at the azure dragon outside Ma Chenye's body. Your Highness the Crown Prince. The Grand Principal, Grand Tutor Jiang, and the others in the room could not help but break through the wall and rush out. However, after rushing out of the room, they could not see the Black Flood Dragon and the Azure Dragon in an instant. The power of the national luck was in harmony with the heavenly Tao. It was not something that ordinary people could see. Experts above the Saint Realm would not be able to see it without special abilities. Just as the Grand Supreme Dean and the others were panicking, Beiqing and Windfeather exchanged glances under the eaves not far away. They then looked at their High Lord with worry. Master, if the Black Flood Dragon controlled by Feng Wuan devoured the true dragon of Ma Chenye's body, the evil physician would not feel good. Moreover, if the other party broke the evil physician's trap, would the evil physician be injured? Master would probably take action, right? Under the eaves, Yi Qianren stood with his hands behind his back. Dressed in a black robe, he seemed to have completely blended into the night. The man's gaze was deep. The dark gold mask on his face flickered with a cold light under the moonlight. Yi Qianren stared at Luo Qingtong, who was standing in the middle of the courtyard. Her gaze never left the young girl. Good. Luo Qingtong remained silent and did not move when she saw the Black Flood Dragon, accompanied by the power of the Golden Dragon of Great Yong, biting the Azure Dragon outside Ma Chenye's body. It was not until the Black Flood Dragon and the power of the Golden Dragon of Great Yong approached the Azure Dragon inside Ma Chenye's body that she suddenly moved. Boom! The young girl's figure flew up. In an instant, her red clothes fluttered like fire. Chapter 1152. It was like a beautiful phoenix in the ninth heaven, and also like the red lotus fire rising from the boundless purgatory. It was as if it wanted to burn everything and destroy the heavens. 8-directional dragon lock formation. Rise! Luo Qingtong's figure flew up. The entire holy capital of the Empire of Qin was suddenly filled with the sound of rattling chains. 1 chain, 2 chains, 3 chains, 8 chains. With the Crown Prince's residence as the center, 8 extremely thick chains suddenly appeared from the void. Buzz! In the 8 directions of the holy capital of the Empire of Qin, the runes of the formation suddenly appeared on the largest building. Luo Qingtong had originally drawn it as a precaution. She did not expect Feng Wuan's ambition to be so great that he actually used so much of Great Yong's accumulated national fortune. However, since he had used it, then he would never return. All of them would stay. Boom! When the 8-directional dragon locking formation rose, the Black Flood Dragon and the power of Great Yong's Golden Dragon appeared above its head, shockingly appearing at the heart of the formation. It turned out that the place where Ma Chenye was located was the center of the 8-directional dragon lock formation. Luo Qingtong allowed them to completely enter before activating the 8-directional dragon lock formation. Rumble. Swish. As the chains stretched out from the void, they wrapped around the Golden Dragon of Great Yong's Golden Dragon of Qin. At the same time, the azure dragon outside Machin Ye's body suddenly raised its head and swung its tail, biting toward the black flood dragon. Without the support of the golden dragon of Great Yong's golden dragon of Qin, the black flood dragon, whose power had been devoured, was no match for the true dragon's fortune in Machin Ye's body. It was bitten fiercely, and the power of fortune that originally belonged to Machin Ye continuously flowed back. The aura in Machin Ye's body skyrocketed, and the azure dragon outside his body grew larger and larger. The black flood dragon's body, however, was shrinking rapidly. However, Feng Wuan did not care about this. Imperial Ancestral Dragon Qi. Her eyes almost popped out of their sockets as she watched the power of Great Yong's golden dragon being restrained. The latter raised its head and swung its tail, struggling with all its might. However, no matter how hard it tried, it could not break free from the shackles of those chains. The dragon-locking formation that Luo Qingtong had drawn was powered by the power of the entire holy capital of the Empire of Qin. Dragon luck as the suppression. How could the power of Great Yong's golden dragon break free? Under Feng Wuan's shocked gaze, the Empire of Qin's azure dragon power, which had risen from the imperial ancestral temple of the Empire of Qin, arrived. Roar! It fiercely raised its head and bit down on the golden dragon form of Great Yong's fate. In an instant, the power of the golden dragon of Great Yong let out a mournful cry as the power of the nation within its body was continuously absorbed. Not good. In the holy capital of Great Yong, ever since Feng Wuan had used the power of the Imperial Ancestral Temple of the Imperial Ancestral Temple, the Saint Transcendence of Great Yong had been paying close attention to the situation in the Imperial Ancestral Temple. This time, when the power of the Golden Dragon of Great Yong was being devoured, his heart suddenly palpitated violently. In the next second, he suddenly heard a mournful cry that ordinary people could not hear coming from the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Something had happened to Great Yong's power of fortune. Moreover, it was a major matter. The transcendent saint from the Great Yong sacred dynasty was both anxious and angry. His figure flashed, and he instantly appeared above the Imperial Ancestral Temple of the holy capital of Great Yong. Boom! Chapter 1153. Stop! As his voice rang out, Yi Zichen's voice sounded. In an instant, his mental power appeared above the golden dragon formed by Great Yong's national fate. It turned into a huge palm and blasted towards the chains formed by the eight-sided dragon lock formation that bound the golden dragon. Humph! With the appearance of the huge palm, the supreme saint of the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty in the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty snorted heavily. Great Yong's national fate suddenly appeared in the holy capital of the Empire of Qin. Thinking of how the Empire of Qin's sacred emperor was bewitched and how the heavenly doctor was related to Great Yong's royal family, how could the supreme saint of the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty not know that Great Yong's royal family was up to something again? Although he didn't know that Machin Ye's true dragon fate had been stolen, since Great Yong's national fate appeared in the holy capital of the Empire of Qin and was captured by the azure dragon of the Empire of Qin's national fate. Therefore, there was no reason to let Great Yong go. Since Great Yong had delivered himself to their doorstep, they should stay here forever. On this point, the supreme saint of the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty and Luo Qingtong's thoughts were exactly the same. However, Luo Qingtong did it casually in order to make things difficult for Feng Wuan. On the other hand, the supreme saint of the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty did it for the benefit of the Empire of Qin's royal family. Boom! The supreme saint of the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty rose up in an instant. At the same time, he blasted his palm towards the huge palm that blasted towards the eight-sided dragon lock formation, blocking the mental power of the supreme saint of Great Yong. Rumble. The two's powers collided. The mental strength of the saint transcendent from Great Yong was supported by the destiny of Great Yong, while the saint transcendent from the Empire of Qin was also supported by the destiny of the Empire of Qin. In an instant, the two were evenly matched. However, that saint transcendent from Great Yong wasn't physically present. It was impossible for him to contend against this saint transcendent from the Empire of Qin just by relying on the power of his mind. In an instant, after a series of earth-shaking tremors, the palm formed from the mental strength of the transcendent saint of the Great Yong sacred dynasty was blasted back. As for Great Yong's golden dragon of destiny, its cries grew louder and louder as it was devoured by the azure dragon of the Empire of Qin. The power of providence was being lost more and more. The fate of my Great Yong. That transcendent saint from the Great Yong sacred dynasty sensed this scene through his mind, and his eyes almost popped out of his head. At this moment, Feng Wuan's voice rang in his ears. Great-grandfather, there's definitely someone controlling that formation. Find her and kill her. There won't be a problem. There's no need to go head-to-head with that saint transcendent from the Empire of Qin. At this moment, Feng Wuan was controlling the Black Flood Dragon, but it was unable to struggle. It was bitten by the azure dragon outside Ma Chen-Ye's body and was constantly being devoured. However, she could give up on the power of providence absorbed by Mo Qinxian, but nothing could happen to Great Yong's power of providence. Otherwise, thinking of this, Great Yong's power of providence was trapped here because of her. If it was really absorbed by the azure dragon of the Empire of Qin, then, after returning, what awaited her would be the thunderous fury of that saint transcendent from Great Yong's royal family. Thinking of this, even though Feng Wuan had many tricks up his sleeve, he couldn't help but shudder. Chapter 1154. This was also because that transcendent saint's mental strength was extraordinary. He could communicate with the heaven and earth spiritual qi, so he could find Luo Qingtong's location so quickly. Looking at the young girl who was flying through the air, her sleeves and skirt fluttering in the wind, her figure and face half covered, a vicious expression suddenly appeared on the face of the transcendent saint from the Great Yong dynasty. Then, the large palm formed from his mental power viciously grabbed towards Luo Qingtong. Kill this woman, and the formation that binds Great Yong's fate will be removed. When the time comes, I will be able to receive the golden dragon formed by Great Yong's fate back. As the transcendent saint from the Great Yong dynasty thought about it, a ferocious glint appeared in his eyes. Rumble. That huge palm instantly blasted towards Luo Qingtong with the force of 1,000 catties. He would not give that transcendent saint from the Empire of Qin dynasty a chance to save him. However, to the surprise of that transcendent saint from the Great Yong sacred dynasty, that transcendent saint from the Great Qin sacred dynasty saw his actions and only glanced in his direction before looking away. He actually ignored it completely. What was going on? The transcendent saint from the Great Yong sacred dynasty was shocked. Was the other party not afraid that he would kill this young girl? As long as he could kill the other party, the crisis of Great Yong's golden dragon of destiny would be resolved. How could that transcendent saint from the Empire of Qin not see this? While the saint transcendent from Great Yong was astonished, the saint transcendent from the Empire of Qin sneered in his heart. He shot a glance at a certain black figure standing under the eaves of a nearby building and immediately shook his head at that transcendent saint from the Great Yong sacred dynasty who was courting death. The other party was too stupid. The Blackfield Underworld Venerable would not care about him if he only fought with him. But now, he was attacking Luo Qingtong. I'll just watch him get into trouble. Sure enough, just as the transcendent saint from the Empire of Qin dynasty thought that, Yi Qianqian's figure flashed under the eaves. In an instant, the man's black figure appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. The young girl's eyes were tightly shut, and her spiritual power was spreading out. No one knew what she was doing. Yi Qianxian glanced at her and stood in front of her with his hands behind his back. Bang! With one hand behind his back, he suddenly waved his other hand. In an instant, the weather changed and the world shook. Yi Qianqian's palm met the palm of the transcendent saint from the Great Yong sacred dynasty. In an instant, the huge palm that seemed to be formed from the power of thought that spanned across the heavens and earth disappeared like smoke in thin air. Ah! That transcendent saint from the great Yong's sacred dynasty suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream as his mental strength was completely destroyed. Not only that, but an extremely vast and majestic force also violently blasted through the connection between his spiritual power and his body. Bang! In the palace of the great Yong's sacred dynasty, the supreme saint of the great Yong's sacred dynasty, who was sitting upright, was sent flying and smashed into the pillar behind him. After breaking 2 pillars, he heavily slammed into the wall behind him. Boom! The entire hall was shaken by this. At the same time, the transcendent saint from the great Yong's sacred dynasty instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. Blackfield Underworld Venerable. He was both shocked and horrified. Chapter 1155. Why would the other party suddenly appear in the Empire of Qin's territory? And why would he suddenly attack me? Wasn't the Blackfield's Ming Zun someone who didn't care about external affairs? As long as you didn't provoke him, he wouldn't do anything. Moreover, the other party's strength seemed to be even stronger than before. Just as the saint from the great Yong dynasty was in shock, in the sky above the crown prince's residence in the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty. After Yi Qianxian repelled the saint from Great Yong, he didn't stop. His eyes were cold as he looked at the struggling golden dragon of Yong in the 8-directional dragon lock formation. He raised his hand and waved. Bang! Roar! The golden dragon of Great Yong instantly raised its head and let out a shrill cry. Under Yi Qianxian's wave, its body instantly shattered and turned into countless strands of fate energy, which were absorbed by the azure dragon of the Empire of Qin. Thank you, Ming Zun. Seeing this scene, the saint from the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty was overjoyed. Yi Qianxian's move instantly saved him a lot of effort. Otherwise, the golden dragon of Yong would probably have to hold on for a long time. At that time, who knew what kind of method Great Yong would come up with to save the golden dragon of Yong? At this moment, all of the golden dragon of Yong's fate energy belonged to the Empire of Qin. Just say that the saint from Great Yong was courting death. Now, he had completely lost the golden dragon of Yong's empire. The saint from the Empire of Qin was extremely grateful to the saint from Great Yong for that palm strike on Luo Qingtong. The evils he brought on himself were the hardest to bear. As the golden dragon of Yong was wailing and shattering, the ancestral temple in Great Yong's sacred capital trembled violently. Rumble. It trembled violently as if it was wailing. Then, with a series of cracking sounds, countless cracks appeared. In the next second, more than half of it collapsed. Ah! My Great Yong's fate energy. Seeing this scene, the saint from Great Yong's sacred dynasty, who had just crawled up from the ground, was furious. The golden dragon of Yong's fate energy that had been accumulated for so many years was actually all absorbed overnight. The ancestral temple collapsed. The Great Yong's royal family had suffered great losses this time. All of the royal family's descendants lose at least 20% of their strength. How could the saint from Great Yong's heart not feel? He roared angrily, then slammed the ground heavily. His figure quickly leaped up and headed towards Feng Yuan's princess royal residence. Feng Yuan Yong. The transcended saint from the Great Yong's sacred dynasty looked extremely furious. He hated himself for believing the other party. Yong 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 Bi Yong Yong Yong. Yong Yong Yong's Yong 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 die. Meanwhile, in Great Yong's sacred capital's royal residence, when Feng Yuan's golden dragon of Yong was shattered, the black flood dragon that she was controlling could no longer resist the bite of the azure dragon formed by the true dragon's fate energy in Ma Chenye's body. In an instant, it was torn into pieces. Her mind was severely injured. In an instant, she returned to her body and rolled off the bed. How can this be? How can this be? Feng Wuan was shocked. She did not know how she had lost. Why was she still defeated even after using the Golden Dragon of Yong's Golden Dragon of Yong? Who was it? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.